Hello and welcome to the B&B Show. My name is Brandon. Of course, this guy right over here, that's Brendan. That's Seahawks Brendan Nelson to you. Brendan, welcome back in the house here. Always nice to welcome you back on into the nest after a win. How are you doing?
Better, definitely better. It's always better after a win than a loss, I think. So if I was doing okay last week, I got to say I'm doing good this week.
Soothing is the victory. It always is, no matter how bad of a loss you had the previous week. One thing I'm going to be interested to get your thoughts on out the gate on this before we kind of look at in my news we have had kind of breaking down here about some injuries or whatnot is how are you feeling after this game? It's a win, but I do find that when I sort of take the pulse of the Seahawks Nation out there and where they stand after this win, it does, and maybe you see if you feel the same thing from yours, that there does seem to be deterrent of different opinions. I can't quite find the right word here, but you've got just a couple different opinions coming out of it. Some people very encouraged, other people going, didn't show me nothing. Where do you find yourself? Does this in that? Are you in that land of I didn't see a lot, or that show me a step into the direction of something good here?
Well, I do think how you feel about the team right now after that game is very dependent on the baggage that you take with you into watching that game. I don't think that game is going to really change your mind about how you feel about this team. Like
No,
there's nothing in that game that I saw that made me think that we're great. There's nothing in that game that in this overall on this season. I mean, you look at the collective body of work. This is not a great team. It's not. I think
no.
that's and I think that's definitely weighing heavy on some people. But I think that if you were to take a step back and understand where we are in this process, this is a team that is going in the right direction. The train is not moving as fast as maybe we would like, but it is a win. It is a team that is clearly headed towards something better. Now, that doesn't guarantee we're going to get there. That's something that's going to be determined in future seasons. But this year's team, I don't think they're going to be great this year. And I think that's got some people down a little bit. I felt the same thing as well. I'm aware of the same things that you're talking about. And for me personally, I I get it, but it's not personally how I'm feeling. I'm taking this in stride. This is the second year of a new era. And honestly, I don't want the current regime to become a victim of their own success in a way, right? Because things went so much better than we thought they were going to last season. I I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves on where this is going to go from here.
Last season raises expectations, and so then you get people thinking we should be great this year. However, as you say, that is a little bit maybe premature of an outlook for this team as far as expectation goes, or at least an unrealistic expectation. And your sentiments are obviously one that I do as well, Brendan, share in that I have the same outlook where I get the frustrations, and I do agree that the team hasn't shown you greatness this year. It hasn't shown you a contender ready team, but that also isn't then necessarily then a logical death knell for the front office or coaching staff to mean that that's an indictment on them not being able to build that and to create that, and or that indeed that's what they are building or creating, because it does feel a little bit like that we're heading at least in that direction and getting into that spot. It may take some time, but we are getting to that territory. I guess in the name of this controversy that does exist out there in the viewpoint of the team, let's go to one of the brighter spots on this team that's the sort of center point of this controversy, which would be one Mr. Geno Smith. A man throws for 370 yards, Brendan, and has a comeback winning drive at the end of the game. And yet there still
He
does
has two.
remain as
He has
two.
two game-winning drives in one game.
And two game winning drives. And yet we still do find ourselves, great point, by the way, on that. Yet we do still do find ourselves at a point where there is still a lot of the fan base that comes out of that saying, oh, see, he's not good enough. See, this is why he's a bridge quarterback and nothing more. Was that performance a performance of one that was a guy that showed you that he's nothing more than a bridge quarterback?
Um, when I think of bridge quarterback, I think of somebody who's a good amount worse than a Geno Smith. I think of somebody who doesn't throw for 370 yards in a game, somebody who doesn't throw 30 touchdowns in one season, somebody who doesn't make the Pro Bowl. I think of somebody more like a Teddy Bridgewater, who's just kind of a guy who's competent enough to get the ball to the receivers most of the time, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So no, I don't believe Geno's a bridge quarterback. I never saw bridge quarterback in him. Last season alone, I think, should remove him from the conversation of being a bridge quarterback. Last season, what he did was far beyond the ability of pretty much any bridge quarterback I can think of. Now, what we saw yesterday, I will admit, it wasn't a perfect game. There were problems. There were big problems. And at halftime, I was pretty down on him. I saw a lot of things that I didn't like. I saw a lot of inaccuracy. The decision he made right before the end of the half was really bad. That's one of those things that there's nothing really I can say other than that was a really, really costly moment in this game. But in the NFL, I know that the bread gets buttered in the fourth quarter of a close game because most games are close. And the teams that are the most successful tend to be the teams with the quarterbacks that come through in the fourth quarter. So for Geno Smith to currently be leading the league in fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives, for him to put up what he put up in that fourth quarter, the touchdown drive and the field goal drive to win it at the buzzer, this is not the week to be speaking slanderously about Geno. It's just not. I mean, there are issues in there. There are a couple throws he missed. There are a couple of bad decisions he made, of course. But this, I don't understand how it strikes me how polarized the discourse around Geno Smith is right now, because after that game, this is not the week to play that game.
Yeah, you put really, I think, where I stand on this too. I'm not trying to be we agree on everything on this. Maybe it will be one of those shows on this one, Brendan. But I just find myself in the same place, looking at the discourse and feeling like we're not really having the conversation in the way we should about in the consideration of Geno, because there are the camps that are there, and there is a camp out there that is just ready with that hook off stage. And they've seemingly had that hook ready for the last year and a half, ready to grab him and rip him off the stage. And any little thing they see that sort of confirms that, they're out there pulling at the hook to grab him over. And anything they see that doesn't confirm to the bias, it just gets the blinders and completely ignored. And I don't think that's being very fair if we're trying to make this debate to really look at it. When he's good, we got to say when he's good. When he's bad, we got to say when he's bad. And this wasn't a perfect game to your point on this, but it is the whole of the game that you make the judgment of the player, not just merely a play or two within the game, but the whole of the game. And in the whole of the game, he played a really good football game. And like you said, brought it home at the end of the day. As Carol said, the last two drives, he basically played perfect football on those last two drives. And that's got to be a part that doesn't get lost in this. And I just hope to God that he does continue to come on strong. He continues to play very well. I hope he makes these people that are just so stridently against him, sometimes without really a lot of good reasons for it as much. Not that there's no reason, but the good reason. We can go to a place, I think, of criticizing Geno Smith and his play, Brendan, without it getting to the hook, without it having to always get to the place of, so get him out of there and get Drew Lock out there, where there's that itching to do that. And it's the place we can't seem to get to on this discussion, but we'll see where he goes.
I mean, what I would say to those people is watch other quarterbacks right now. Watch other quarterbacks, because I guarantee you that these people are convinced that quarterback X is way better than Geno. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Tua, Jared Goff. They're all having really, really bad plays, really, really bad games. They're all doing it. So quarterback play this year, I feel like, is down. I don't know if it actually is statistically, but I don't feel like there's any one. There are very few consistent quarterbacks. Every quarterback, including the ones who are generally considered to be at the very top of the NFL, they're having a hard time right now. And I think that if you tried to say, I don't want Geno Smith anymore, I want QBX, you could only really defend your position with a couple of quarterbacks this year. Like, could you imagine if Josh Allen was our quarterback right now with the way he's playing?
Not with our pass protection throughout this year. I think
if we had Josh Allen, people would be screaming for Drew Lock too. If we had Justin Herbert, I think people would scream for Drew Lock. Herbert is the king of the fourth quarter interception in the close game.
Oh,
he's got the whole field lapped.
Yeah. Could you imagine if he failed out against the Commanders at quarterback? Yeah, they'd be all over a Drew Lock. Like, get this Herbert out. We get Lock in there. He couldn't get the fourth quarter, couldn't get it done. See, can't get it done. Right there, proof. Absolutely 100% proof. No doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think the quarterback that these people think exists. Like it's like maybe 2 or 3 guys, right? Even Mahomes. I mean, look at what Mahomes did against the terrible Denver defense 3 weeks ago. He was awful. That was much worse than any game Geno's played since he got here. Not even close, I don't think.
Yeah.
So this quarterback that people think is just out there to go get, that is going to be so much better and change things for this team, he does not exist.
It's very true. I mean, even if you're looking at the second round quarterback, that we're probably likely to get second, third, fourth round. I know we don't have a second round pick, but if we were to pick one, they're still not likely to be a guy right now as they come in their first year or second year ready to play at the level of where Geno's at. But hopefully Geno can maybe put these people to fully silence, get Lucas back here in the next week, offense starting to maybe find some signs of life to it, and that he can, get it to a place so that they're quieted by the end of the year and they don't have a lot to say, or, that'd be the ultimate, I guess, victory would be their silence on that if it does go down to that. But I'm rooting for him because I don't feel like all fans are giving. I root for him because I just like the way that he's approached the position as our leader and quarterback on this team, but also because I just don't feel at times like there's always the fairest of shakes being given to him. And I'm always going to root for an underdog. We're kind of an underdog city, man. It's just in our nature.
Yeah. I mean, I look at the body of work of what Geno has provided to this team, and I think people lose track of how remarkably above cost it's been. It really has been.
Yeah, it really has. And being the 10th or 17th highest paid quarterback, he's certainly at least, earning the money to this year. It's hard to say, oh, we're overpaying him this year for what he's given. I don't know if I can get there with it. Let's look a little bit at this offense as a whole and what went down this week. As we did see some overall improvement, though, like you said, it was a little bit of a rough first half where things still did look a little bit disjointed. To your mind, what allowed this offense to start to take a little bit of a firmer hold? I mean, they set a season high for total yards in this game. Was it just that Washington was so bad defensively that allowed that to happen? Or was it that something was coming together on the offensive side of the ball for the Hawks?
I do think Washington's defense is bad. I do. I think that's a pretty fair statement. But it was bad in the first half, too. It's the same defense, right? They didn't change out. And by the way, Emmanuel Forbes is addition by subtraction as far as I'm concerned with the way he's played this year. So I'm not getting into that.
Yeah, that's true. He's got some bright spot moments he's had, but yeah, he's overall been bad.
Yeah. So it's hard to know exactly what switched over. I think it's just a matter of the team simply executing. I think, we had multiple screenplays in this game work. We had multiple screenplays in this game work. We saw a play. I mean, I think it was just the 1 or 2 plays where we get JSN on a linebacker where, that's what you want, right? You want JSN being covered by a linebacker coming over the middle. We saw some of that, and that's a gimme play. And on that first drive, we did hit a big play on something like that. We saw, I would say this was something more throughout the game, but especially at the end, you see us start going back to the well that doesn't ever seem to run dry. Like I was saying this during the game, and I stand by it. I think that if we ran the comebacker to DK like 20 times a game, he'd catch it about 18 times. I don't know what a defense can do about that because you look like you're running the 9 route. DK's got that incredible deep speed. You have to respect that. You're running back, sprinting back, and then all of a sudden he turns around, comes back to the ball. How is he not open? Like he's just so hard to deal with. And we saw that route run quite a few times in this game. We saw that play run and it just kept working. And it almost feels like there's a sportsmanship element sometimes with this offense where we find these plays that work really well. And then we're like, we can't keep running that. It's not fair. It's like those Madden plays that you don't let your friend run because they're like, that's impossible to stop. You can't run that play anymore. They're like, okay. Yeah. But this isn't Madden. This is real life.
It's true. It's a great point on your point. He does a good job with it too on those comebacks of getting to a stop. So he'll go full speed and he can actually get those big legs stopped quick to come back on the comeback route where a lot of times those big guys not a lot of big guys go 4-3, but to be going that fast to slow all of that weight down quickly. It's sort of like the road runner where it starts going, and then the corner's got the chance to then get back on top of the route and correct. But you're right. Another thing it does too as well, Like you spoke about the JSN route where he's running the crosser and he gets on the linebacker. And part of what makes that route go is you have DK running in the 9 route to that side of the field, and the safety over the top instantly draws down to the DK. So one thing is with that comeback route that you can do too is that you eliminate sometimes the double team safety over the top, because he's waiting for DK to arrive on the 9 route over the top. Instead, he comes back, and now the safety's kind of left in no man's land on that play on those kind of routes if you run them. Seeing the same kind of thing with that. And DK played Brendan a hell of a game.
Yeah. And obviously the main thing that happened with this offense in this game was yards after the catch. We had 250 yards after the catch in this game, which is one of the highest totals any team has posted this year. And you look at how it happened. We ran a screen to K9 and he just houses it for 64 yards. You've got the JSN bubble screens, which are working more than they're not working now, I would say. We ran a kind of weird slant bubble screen to DK that picked up a first down. I think we did it with Lockett once or twice. It worked. Disley had the screen pass that he took for 16 yards. And it does feel like we're finally starting to get the offense, even though it's not working as well as we would like overall. In some way, we are getting the offense that we thought we were getting all along when we hired Shane Waldron, which you look at the Rams when Waldron was there. They were a team that depended heavily on yards after the catch. They were a top 5 team in YAC in 2020, and they were a team that ran those screens well. And over the last couple of years, we've wondered where that is. Hasn't really been there. Maybe he's finally getting the personnel that allows him to do those things. He's getting the receiver like JSN who can run the bubble screens. He's getting backs who can catch the ball and make a big play after the catch. Although I would say there still needs to be some work here, he's getting some offensive linemen that can go block for those screens. So as much as the offense this year has been disappointing, it's not playing good enough in terms of result, but in terms of the process, I think this is an indication that we are trending in the right direction, because these plays that have never worked for us before are starting to really work for us.
Agreed. I think it was a little bit more of a widening out of the offense of scheme in this game, Brendan, in a unique way that it hasn't been this year. And coming to the game, better use on the 2 and the 3 tight end sets, a little bit more of the outside run, continue to bring on the screen game. Part of, I think, the reason the screen game has come so much to the forefront is the past couple of weeks, the Ravens, and this week, I felt like the Commanders because the Commanders are not really a blitz heavy team throughout this year, but they were bringing a lot of those stacked front blitzes up on Geno again in this game, kind of like, well, Baltimore did it right. We can maybe kind of do the same thing they did. And a way to beat the blitz is to use the screen, and it can be running back screen, it can be tight end screen, it can be bubble screen to your receivers, but that's a way to counter that. And probably why they found the effectiveness. But great point about the yak. This is an offense, and even beyond McVay, if you take the offense down to its origins, West Coast offense is about getting the ball in the receiver's hands, tight end, whatever it is, get the ball in their hands quickly and let them go to work. Let them then generate the yards, as opposed to it being about air yards and throwing the ball down the field. And so this was a game, to be, Brendan, that was more to the designs of how you want this offense to flow, a more of a utilization of post-snap motion, Brendan. They ran those things we were talking about in the game preview, getting that receiver coming back across the formation, Geno, rolling out to that side. Nice, easy completion for him there out in space. Doesn't always get you a lot of yards, but it just gets Geno on point, starts to get him on rhythm, starts to get the offense a little bit on rhythm, it feels like. And they started just all those little things that we'd asked them to bring in, they brought into this game, it felt like. And you walk out of it just even better, Brendan, having all those yards, having all those yak yards, finding some balance offensively. It was very encouraging, and one reason, they're bad defense, but it is something that maybe you can build on going forward. Just finding the mixture, if not maybe the results.
Right. So that would be, I think, the main thing that stands out with why the offense started playing so much better in the second half. But really, even in that first half, we moved the ball. We just couldn't finish drives. And that is a little bit harder to trace through, I feel like. That's a red zone conversation that we're still kind of trying to feel this out and figure this out a little bit. I know we used tight ends more in this game. I'm not convinced we did it quite enough. I mean, we had a combination of 5 total catches between all 3 of our tight ends in this game. I don't know if that's where we want to be, but it was obviously a step in the right direction from Baltimore, where we did not use tight ends hardly at all. Yeah, basically. Disley was first time I've seen him catch a pass in a while. It feels like he's been an afterthought. So stuff like that is good. I think the most encouraging thing for me on the offense was the play of the offensive line, just leaps and bounds better than what we saw against Baltimore. And I know it's a completely different challenge, but they've still got Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne up there, and those are very good players. They're not necessarily playing great this year, but I didn't hear anything from either of those guys in this game.
Well, and to your point, what those blitzes did in a lot of situations in this game was allow those guys one-on-one opportunities. And so that was going to test your guys out. And I think, there was a mixed bag, I think, in how they held up against those guys, but they didn't allow them to game wreck it. They didn't allow them to control the game when, they were a problem, and they minimized it as much as they could. They're going to be a problem for everybody. But yeah, I agree. I think the line held up. How about Peters? One pressure the whole game, and you've got a couple of nice all 22 pancake blocks of him in the running game. How nice is it going to be able to go forward knowing with Lucas there that you have a guy now in Peters as we go through the rest of this year where our backups are in such good place. You can trust in Stone Forsythe on the left side at this point. I think you feel like you can trust in Peters. You got to call on him. You still have Curhan on this roster from a depth standpoint. And this has been problematic for us in recent history on our line at times with some of the injuries that have mounted. You got some depth there here going through the rest of this year. I don't know what it'll add up to. I don't know if we'll be able to have to call upon it or it'll be necessary once Lucas comes, but it's just nice to have.
Yeah, I would hesitate to have a ton of faith in Peters. He is old. I think he is a guy who, if you put him out there constantly, he's going to have some good games, but then he's going to have some bad games. Yeah, because at that age, you just can't get it up every week. But oops, my bad.
That's what you just got to give him some Viagra, man. He'll be all right. He'll be
hopefully
consistent week to week, rising to the occasion.
But yeah, that was good to see. I thought that Damian Lewis actually played really well with his run blocking, which was nice to see because he's obviously not having a very good year. Cross definitely played better. The only real issue with the offensive line would be they picked up quite a few penalties in this game. I think there were like 4 maybe at home. That's not good. But I think the offensive line was much improved. And that's kind of the formula here, right? That's kind of the recipe that we hope is going to keep up the rest of the way, because we're supposedly going to get Abe Lucas back very soon here. And then you've got your full complement of starters at that point. So there's no excuse.
It's definitely the anticipation I have, which is that the offense takes the big final hopeful step forward on this season into being its best self once you get Lucas back into the fray, because it's held up relatively well from an injury standpoint. Aside from this, everything's coming into your ranks where you're not down anything offensively. So if we had thought coming into this that if they're full strength, they could be like a top 5 unit, now you get them to full strength. Can they ascend to that spot? It's going to be hard. There's going to be some tough defenses to go through to get to that range, but it won't be for a lack of the talent being there or you having an epidemic of injuries that will have held you back. You will have your full strength to make your biggest punch and see what you can do with it.
Right.
Kasra, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that, Kasra, and appreciate you as well. I know you dropped a couple donos on the other stream we did today, so thank you for that. Hope you guys are having a good day. Seeing canines receiving makes me wonder how we could have missed that part of his game so badly last year.
I mean, they never threw him the ball at Michigan State. I think he had like 4 catches in his career.
Yeah.
So it wasn't hard to miss it. There was nothing to see.
Yeah, I think it was a part that they weren't as aware that was a part of his game, Kasra. As we went into, the first year with him last year, you also still did have at that time Homer on the roster. So, part of, I think what happened here a little bit is that you had K9 initially early on stuck behind Rashad Penny. Homer was kind of embedded as your third down back, or DJ Dallas. And then, okay, now Dallas goes down. Now Penny goes down, and you got to put K9 into the starting lineup, and he's got to eat up all the carries in there now. So you still want to offload that balance with a third down back. And third down backs are going to get the multitude of receiving catches out of the backfield most of the time anyway. So that also kind of limited it down, I think, on top of maybe a final factor being load balance, where last year you had to be kind of aware of it with K9 as the year went along because he had the injury. His carries started to stack up as the year went along in a heavy fashion because you didn't have anybody else literally to go to. I think all that kind of factored in a bit of that to, lower that down, Kasra. But it does look like they are trying at times this year. I think he's had a bubble screen. I think they've had a couple times where you can see them has him as the priority one on a particular offensive play, going to him and just getting the ball in his hands and letting him go work in space.
Yeah, and going forward, I think it's actually important we try to get him touches in that situation, because I've been looking at some of the advanced numbers like rush EPA and efficiency and things like that, and honestly, they're pretty down on K9. They don't think he's having a very good year. His yards per carry are down. His success rate is pretty low. And I made a video about this earlier today. I think what it is that this offensive line is not really built to zone block, which is what K9 would be good at, right? K9 would thrive in a zone blocking scheme, and our ability to do that is limited because not only are we still anchored by guys like Damian Lewis, Evan Brown, and to a certain extent Phil Haynes, but Abe Lucas, who was going to be a good move tackle, hasn't really played this year, and we've been replacing him with guys who, I mean, Stone Forsythe and Jason Peters and Jay Curhan, those are not really move tackles. You wouldn't exactly put those guys in space and say, yeah, they're going to lay a block on a linebacker at the second level ahead of the running back. So I think this offensive line might be a little more well-built for Charbonnet's running style. It's more of a mano-a-mano, straight-up offensive line right now. So maybe you got to get Charbonnet more carries, and if you want to get Walker involved more, it's got to be more through the air.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of it, Brendan. And not the worst way to go right now, because K9 has shouldered so much of the burden already this year with some of the touches he's had, offsetting that a little bit and working a little bit more Charbonnet now to keep him fresh and healthy isn't the worst way to go either. I do find myself not in agreement with PFF on this one. I mean, and I watch the All-22 multiple times over every week. And I have moments where I sit there and watch it, Brendan, specifically with K9 doing the which is just the whole thing of, okay, I got the shot from behind, end zone shot. He's approaching into the hole. What is he seeing? What's his reads on this play? Where should he have gone that he couldn't have gone, or what choice did he make that he shouldn't have made instead of going here? Because that's what the whole PFF thing will catch you for is, okay, the hole's here. There's a guy standing in the hole. I have to leave the hole now. I've got to go dance. No, right. You should just put your head in his chest and push it forward for 3 yards. And I see so many of his runs where that's the case, where there's some guy with penetration right there in the hole. A lot of Charbonnet's runs have been that way too, but it's especially with K9 on a multitude of his runs. It's like there's nowhere to go. There's early penetration, and then there's guys at the flow state of the play. It's like 1-2 both, where he's got to redirect off the snap, take a precipitous route going around in a little half circle, and then there's a guy there at the end of the play too, sitting where he can't even break through at the end of it once he gets around the initial penetration. Too many of those times are occurring for me to really feel like K9 is not anything but what we thought he was last year, which was one of the more dynamic backs in the league. Not one of the best backs, but one of the more dynamic backs in the league. And yeah, he showed you on that catch and run what he can do when you give him a little bit of space to work with.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really down on K9 as a player, but I am wondering if this current offensive line is not the offensive line that he's going to make the best possible music with. Next year, you get Cooper Bebe in here, Bradford starting, Oluwatimi starting. That's a little different, right? That's a zone blocking offensive line then. Everybody on that line, with the possible exception of Anthony Bradford, who I still think is a phenomenal athlete.
No, he works. He's got the athlete. Yeah, he's a great athlete. Yeah. He'd be a fit.
Yeah. Like everybody on that offensive line would be meant to play in space. And then I think K9 could be a all-pro level running back. Yeah. But behind this offensive line, maybe Charbonnet just makes a little more sense. So I have been thinking about that since the game on Sunday.
Well, there's a fair point to make that you want to go with who's the most effective right now, because we are in the thick of this. We are in the hunt, and you want to find more consistency in the ground game, whatever the answer is that's going to make that happen. And if that is the answer, then I'm fully okay with it. And you can't deny, you come out of this game with K9 at 3.3 yards per carry and Charbonnet at 7.1 yards per carry. And there's been a few of those games like that this year with those two guys when you've been able to find a balance between the two. And it's only going to, I think, increase the voices to say that, to your point, he is more effective in where this line is currently right now. Not that he's the more effective player, but just maybe more effective for where this offensive line is protecting. I think it's a completely fair point, Brendan. Thank you, Kasra, for that donation. Corey Coombe with a $5 donation says Lockett needs just 27 receiving yards and 3 catches to be second all-time in Seahawks history in both categories. How about that? Speak a little bit, if you can, to Lockett's day real quick. I'm just get a quick cup of coffee here. 1 second.
All right. I mean, it was great to see. It's great to see because I know that there have been some people out there this season who have wondered if Lockett is losing a step. Maybe he got hurt. Maybe he's just not able to separate the way he used to. And I'm sure he's not quite the player that he was back in 2018, 2019, 2020. But his ability to have games like that does show that he's still I would say worth the money. I would say worth the money, worth the investment, worth the time. I don't think he's dropped a pass yet this year. And I mean, obviously he's going to get there, right? If he's 3 catches and 27 yards away, he's going to get there. That's a done deal effectively. And I can't really think of anybody else who could be the second best receiver in Seahawks history right now.
No, he's, for my money, long surpassed Brian Blades, and even last year surpassing Doug Baldwin. He's projected right now to go for 87 receptions this year, 933 yards. That's what we thought we could get out of Tyler, as far as that's what he brings. He brings 1,000 yards a season. He's consistent. He shows up every single week. There are times that he's going to have some real upper level games throughout the course of the year. But he's consistency, and he's out there, and prop to him as well. He got smacked in the head in this game. I hope he didn't come back after a concussion, because it looked like a garden variety concussion on the helmet to helmet hit. But for me, for a while, he's been that guy as the second best, because you put the touchdowns. He's got 58 receiving touchdowns all time, in addition to those catches and receiving yards, Corey, which I would guess is second all time as well, the large and already. And he's capped it all off, and he's been so good. I mean, he might just miss 1,000 yards this year. He missed just 1,000 as well, or he'd have, I think, something like 6 straight seasons or something. This would be at the 1,000 yards, I think, if he can get to it, because he had 965, and then he had 1,000, and then he'd be another 1,000 here.
Yeah, so Largent had 4, and then he took a year off, and then 4. There was 1 year where he didn't get it, and he went 4-4 on the other sides of it. So if he does it, he's the first Seahawks receiver ever to have 5 straight years of 1,000 yards.
That'd be pretty crazy. That'd be pretty crazy if he could get it going. But I'm with you too. It's worth it for the money we're spending. It's worth it. He's a guy that I think still has every bit of place here, even into the future. There's going to be tough decisions at the end of this year to be made, but he still looks like a guy that can get it done. I mean, he still comes away, and boy, he's kind of Geno's security blanket, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I've been seeing like some of the articles that are being published right now of people like 5 surprise cuts that Team X might make at the end of the season. And for the Seahawks, it's Lockett is always like listed as like, this may shock you, but with the money the Seahawks could save, this might be the, and I don't think so.
No, I don't think he plays for another team in his career. And I think the Hawks would find a creative way. If they were worried about the cap hit he was costing, they would say, okay, look, how many years do you have left? Let's find a way to make this work. Especially with the way the Bobby situation worked out. I just think something like that would inform them a little bit better of, the guy is still performing for you. It's one thing to move off of the guy that's aging and has nothing left in the tank. It's another thing to move off of a guy just to move off of a guy who has something left in the tank, who, like we saw in Bobby's case, was willing to renegotiate at the time, willing to work with the team to find a common ground on the numbers. So hopefully that isn't the case. I don't see it either, Brendan. I think there's a lot of other guys that are going to be on that chopping block potentially if things hold fit to true as they've been so far this year. But I don't think Lockett's going to be one of them. Thank you. Thank you, Corey, for that donation. I appreciate you for that. Cheese Taco, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, hey, B, I need Brendan to smile for 5 points on my fantasy. At halftime on the stream, can you please hype him up a bit for the second half? Thanks, B. Come on, Brendan. I need you lit right now, man. I need you Cheshire grin, ear to ear. I want to see nothing but pearly whites up in here. Come on. Come on.
I can't show my teeth right now. You know why. The chat might not know why, but I'm not proud of my teeth right now.
He's not proud of his teeth. And it's understandably so on this one, Cheese. He's trying to, until we get a couple weeks down the line, he's going to, even after a couple weeks, you're going to have to wait even for that. Next couple months. We're going to have to wait on that one, Brendan, because they got to let the thing set. So Brendan's got a good reason on this. Give him give me a, there we go. There we go. We got it there, Cheese. We got him. Got him.
Yeah. This is why 15 years ago, I just did audio only. There was no video.
That's right. Back in the beautiful old podcast days. No need to worry about the film.
Mm-hmm. There's a $15 webcam I got at Walmart.
Uh,
It's not. You couldn't have told if I was smiling or not anyway.
It turns you into a Roblox character. Just appreciate you, Cheese. Thank you, man. And congrats on the 5 points for fantasy. Garth, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, Brando, I think your German Hawk fan sent me an extravagant Xmas decoration with no return address. Please pass on my many thanks to him. I will indeed.
Very cool.
Kind of them to do so, Garth. That's awesome. But yeah, I don't think I have his return address either on that one, man. Appreciate you, Garth. Thanks as well for some donations.
I mean, like, what does extravagant mean though? Is this like Iron Man 3 when Tony Stark got the 2-story tall stuffed rabbit?
Well, it's coming from a German fan and it's Garth, so I think anything is on the table here. Just about anything's on the table.
Is this like the Christmas tree they have in Times Square? Like, what are we talking here?
A replica, basically, in the snow globe, hand belted form, something like that. Well, anything else notable in this game from your perspective offensively? I thought DK was awesome. He was starting out this game, and I don't think that he should have caught that earlier 9-route ball that Geno kind of underthrew. Geno's got to give him some space under that. Instead, throw it out in front. And going back and watching the All-22, it confirmed that, where Geno tried to throw that with touch rather than putting it out in front of him. Threw it behind him then a little later on in the game. Not, again, DK's fault in that, but then he made some really good catches up out away from him, where he's got to go up and not a high point of ball, but you can't do you get Geno throwing those hot potatoes in there and you want to kind of body it so you can kind of absorb it. And DK getting the hands up and catching a couple of those tough passes to make sure he had it secured before contact came. Great job by DK to come through at the end of this game. And when you needed it, on those last couple of drives.
Yeah, I think that game was kind of everything that we could ever want from DK Metcalf in a way. You saw yards after the catch, which is something that we keep expecting to see with him, and sometimes it seems like it's just not there. You see some of the toughness. You see the varied route tree that he ran in this game, like the on 3rd down, 3rd and 4 on that final drive, the field goal winning drive. He catches a blitz beater, just a quick little slant over the middle, nice and easy. Almost housed it. Honestly, he had one guy to beat. He almost housed it.
Yeah.
Just a variety of ways in which he attacked. Some people were saying he dropped that one pass. I mean, maybe he should have caught it, but I don't think it's a drop either. I think it's just circumstance. Stuff happens. I don't consider that a drop, really.
Are they saying that on the 9 route?
No, it's the one where it kind of hit him in the chest. St. Juste was covering him, and the ball kind of hit his chest.
That's the deep route down the sideline, though, right? Isn't that the deep down the side? Because St. Juste is in coverage in that one too, and it's right there where he's in.
Maybe we're talking about the same play here. I think we are.
Because to me, that's the play where it's Geno's throwing it and he underthrows it. So he allows the defender to get back into the play. And maybe he's thinking he's going to draw a PI on the defender. But the problem with DK making that catch there is that the defender's hitting him before the ball arrives. And you know this with DK. The officials let these cornerbacks get physical with him. And it's part of, I think, some of the issues with him winning contested catch situations is that he doesn't always get the benefit of the doubt on the officials with the physicality. I've called it the Shaq rules. Back in the day with Shaquille O'Neal, they let power forwards and centers in the league that were giving up 75 pounds to Shaquille O'Neal beat the hell out of him at times down there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just, it sucks, but it seems like there's a human nature thing from officials. I don't know if they feel bad for the corners on the outside or whatever, but you can clearly see on a lot of these plays, on that play when they slow-moed it, that Benjamin St. Juste made contact with them before the ball arrived. I mean, that he affected his ability to make the catch on that play with that contact. And maybe you should still just go catch that, but I don't know. I don't see a lot of receivers in this league that consistently make contested catches where they're getting molested before the ball arrives. I don't see a lot of that occurring myself. I see tough catches at the high point and all that, but not that way with it. Am I off on that? Do you see those?
No, I agree. I think that, there's a gray area between a drop and a ball that a receiver has no chance to catch. Like the receiver can have a chance to catch it, but I still don't consider it to be like a bad drop or something.
Yeah, agree.
Like technically, yeah, DK could have caught it, but I don't think it's like the drop he had against the Rams in week 1. That's actually a drop.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. And that
Uh,
final catch he made to get free, to get 10 yards closer after that yak, where if he just goes down, that's a lot tougher of a kick for Myers versus where he ended out. Big play there as well.
yeah, I mean, they planned it out. It's like they drew it up, right? They had just enough time to spike it without having to rush it,
Yeah.
and it was also just enough time to kick without leaving any time left on the other side. It was like they drew it up exactly that way. So
Props
I
props to Geno there. That thing you just mentioned, the taking the time, because that's such a thing we've seen at times where quarterbacks in that scenario come down, right? And they just want to get the snap off. And so then they don't get everybody set. So you get those one of those penalties where the guy doesn't just get down in a stance on the line of scrimmage, flag comes out, and then what happens, Brendan? You get the automatic runoff. And you
yeah.
only have 3 seconds at that. So if an automatic runoff happens, you're screwed at that point.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't believe. I mean, did you see what Denver did last night on their game-winning field goal?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could not believe they willingly let a situation where they have a running clock trying to get the field goal unit on. Like it's one thing when you have to do it, but I couldn't believe they offered themselves up to that situation. And sure enough, it didn't work. They just got lucky that Buffalo was even dumber. But
Yeah.
I could not believe they were actually like, yeah, we are willingly going to have our field goal unit run on with a running clock.
I don't
Eh,
like it either. Yeah.
yeah.
I that's
So they handled it brilliantly.
That's way overthinking it. Where it's like, I get not wanting to leave Josh Allen the time on the clock. That's another one though where you got to read it too, where it's like, yeah, but he doesn't have the best of games. This isn't Josh Allen like last year, 2 years ago running. This is our defense can hold them up on that. I don't like the running clock ticking though. To me, that's a no-go area. Like unless you absolutely have to have your kicking unit come out there with a rolling clock. Cause you know, that kicker's already up in his head. And then you start trying to make him feel like he's get lined up. You know, they love to do that whole thing where they're like, breathe and they go through their Buddhist
Yeah.
Zao thing, you
Exactly.
know, they're creatures of habit. So it's like you force their
Mhm,
habit, you mess them up. But
mhm.
that was cool to see Geno aware of the time, aware he had the time to let everybody get up there before he had to spike it, where it wasn't a matter of just quicking it up, let everybody get set there. And that was big, very
Yeah,
big.
and it was like a direct reply to what happened at the end of the first half when he completely lost perspective of the situation and gave up a field goal opportunity. And I mean, granted, it's not a guarantee that Myers makes it, but Myers is definitely going to get the distance on it. I'll say that much, right?
It's his worst play of the game for Geno Smith for me. It is the worst play of the game. And it's because there are times you can control things and times you can't control things. And that is an unforced controllable error because you make the determination before the play, Brendan. You come up to the line and you go this. We don't have a timeout. I'm going to have enough time to make two reads. And if the two reads aren't there, hell, make one read. Say you're going to make one. But if you want to say two, I'll look through two things. And then I got to throw the ball somewhere. I've got to have a plan for where my throwaway happens from within the pocket, not rolling out of the pocket at that point. From within the pocket, do I have DK running a 9 route that I can whistle through the back of the end zone that I'm not going to get a intentional grounding call? But have
Yep.
that plan in place before the play, not in the middle of the play. And you could see his head go one, and you could see his head go two. And then he tried to get up into the top of the pocket there to extend the play a bit. And that's where then third needs to be you whistle that amounts and preserve the 3 points there, which are 10 amount. And that's one where I will not excuse any part of that from Geno's standpoint. That is absolutely on his part, just a horrible play there in that moment. You can't do that as a quarterback because there's so many things you can't control that go wrong as a quarterback. You don't want to add to them. And that's kind of what he did in that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's like what happened at the end of the game was like a direct response, like a direct contrast. So that was
Mm,
cool. I appreciate
absolutely.
little things like that.
Yeah, he brought it home at the end, and he got it right at the end, and that's what matters most. Well, let's turn over here to the defensive side of the ball and take a little bit of a look at this defense and what they brought to bear in this game. Had the opening drive with Jamal Adams coming on the blitz, free rush here, just like we had with the Giants game, Brendan, where we had with last year. We got injured on the Russell Wilson play. He's got him dead to rights, but can't seem to bring the quarterback down in the pocket. Do you have a reason for, is this an issue or just this is a small sample size of this happening recently and this is not what we're going to see as we go forward here on this one?
It looks like he's playing out of control. Like not just that play. There are a lot of plays where it looks like he's just running in like a 5-year-old who's on a sugar high of some sort. And by the way, I know sugar highs are actually myths. They don't exist.
Yeah, but they kind of
But
do.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is it seems like he's just not in control. And I gotta admit, I am getting a little irritated by it, the Jamal Adams angle here. Like, what Twilight Zone episode are we in where we have Jamal Adams and the only thing he's doing really well is covering? Like, he has been bulletproof in coverage this year. I think he's given up like 40 yards on the season in coverage.
Yeah.
And now he can't tackle. Now he's not an effective pass rusher. It's like this is a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah. Well, and it's also you don't really send him very much. I mean, he went early on in the game, and a lot of these games, he's not getting sent on the blitz often. But a big part of what makes him who he is that we can use him as an effective rusher from time to time. And they got a decision to make with him, and it's hard for me to come to a hard ground on this one because I kind of have a lot of sympathy for where he is. He is coming off this injury. You listen to him talk in the press conference about the soreness in the kneecap, on the sideline, putting the warmer on it. I mean, he is being a good warrior going out there and fighting as he's fighting to make happen what he's making happen. And PFF liked his game relatively well for whatever that's worth and how they graded him. But I do see the things you're seeing. And it is something I hope he can start to maybe clean up a little bit more, because when you have your defensive coordinator dial up the right play and put you in a position to get a free, easy sack, whereas he called it a layup sack, then lay it up. You can't brick that at that point. And we're having some brickage going on here, and we need him to be able to use that part of his game. And like you say, a little bit more under control, just kind of flying it. It was a weird one too, Brennan. It's like, Hal didn't do anything. He just stood there and he flew right past. He didn't hit the brakes. He was just, oh, I'm sacked. It was kind of like a quarterback like, oh, I'm dead to rights. What am I going to do? Just protect the ball and get down right. And it just kind of one-armed him right past. Wrapping up defensively, Brendan, is something this defense as a whole could do a hair bit better, couldn't they?
Yeah, I understand the need to be patient with Adams because he's coming back from this injury that probably should have ended his career. But like, I don't feel like that injury means it's okay for him to be incompetent tackling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't either.
So I don't buy it. Totally.
No, I don't either. And look, we're going to have a hard decision to make at the end of this offseason with somebody. And I'm not saying Adams is on chopping block or anything like that, but somebody is going to have to get cut out for them to clear the cap space they're going to need to clear to be able to make something happen if they want to get to contender status next year. And so I don't know that it's him or who it's going to be necessarily, but you're paying him $18 million a year, Brendan. Are we getting $18 million of return back?
Definitely not even close. I mean, he would have to score a touchdown like every game for us to be getting our money's worth on Adams at this point. Like that's not happening. But are we getting a good player? In some, I guess overall he's been more good than bad. But I mean, like, if you put Jarek Reed out there in his place, I mean, you're gonna lose some stuff, but you might gain some stuff too. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say with that. We'll just have to, he'll be one of those guys, much like, with Geno going into this stretch of 4 games after this Rams game, even including this Rams game, the stretch of 5 games, it'd be a guy that I'll be paying very close attention to and the impact he's bringing when it comes down to people asking us at the end of the year, who has to be the one that we create the space for here? Who's the guy that we got to do this? And somebody's going to have to be called to account, unfortunately, because of the nature of where our cap space is at, only having about $7 million. So you're going to, somebody's going to have to be given the slip a little bit, as unfortunate as that is. It's just the reality of life. Looking at the defensive line in this game, Brendan, I found it to be a bit of a mixed bag. Did you feel the same? I love what I saw. We got out of Leonard Williams. I love having Dre'Mont Jones on the outside. What a great adjustment by the defensive staff.
Oh, yeah.
Right? No one, because you could see, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm happy we're talking about this because that was something I noticed too, and something I've been thinking about a lot coming out of that game.
Yeah. Well, just because you see what the scores on Frank Clark and Taylor, right? Even after this game, where like they're not giving you, especially in the run game, you just can't count on those guys on the edges. Whereas you see him on the edges and you're like, well, he's a handful for a tackle, at least in the run game. Maybe he can't be as dynamic as a pass rusher, but he'll hold up over there on that part of it.
I think he had 4 pressures in this game too, so he was winning in that area. But like the last offensive play that Washington ran, the touchdown to De'Ami Brown, I think it was De'Ami Brown. Like, you can see Frank Clark in there getting escorted away from the play by the left tackle, basically. And Howell, that play happens because Howell has like what felt like 6 or 7 seconds back there because Frank Clark can't do anything.
Mhm.
So I understand that he's not going anywhere this year and that we're going to continue to give him chances, but I'm pretty bearish on the idea of us getting anything out of Frank Clark this year. Maybe he'll wake up in the playoffs because he usually does that, right?
Gotta wait for playoff Frank, man. That's just he's just holding. He's keeping the reservoir deep, Brendan. You know, he's saving what he's got in the tank for that playoff run. That's all. That's all he's doing.
Yeah,
He's got to save himself. He's an older player. What are you gonna do? You know.
right. So I really like the Dre'Mont Jones adjustment. He played most of his snaps on edge at this game, and he did that a lot last year in Denver, which was his best year, right?
Mhm.
Like last year was the year that got him paid. We
Yeah.
brought him in mostly because of what he did in 2022. So you should try to use him in the same way. And he actually lined up as an edge more than he lined up in the B gap on 2022. So I like it. I think trying to find ways to utilize our players in more creative ways is the only way we're going to get through the Nwosu loss.
Yes,
Because
sir.
now you can really reduce Frank Clark's usage. Now you're going to have to eventually at some point trust in Derek Hall. Doesn't seem like we trust him at all right now. He barely played in that game. I think it was 11 snaps. He played less snaps than Frank Clark, who got here less than a month ago.
I think I'd say though too, they're probably trying to remember he had the injury last week. It was
Mm.
a really bad one, and it's been a shoulder thing he's been dealing with. I would estimate that they're probably trying to keep a little bit of the load off of him. In addition to that,
Probably, but he also played really badly against Baltimore. He had like 3 missed tackles.
yeah,
So maybe he was in the doghouse a little bit. I think that's possible. But the way we're doing things is still feels a little untenable with us saying, okay, we got Mafe and Mafe's great, but then we're going to play Daryl Taylor 70% of the snaps when teams have really learned how to attack him. I mean, it's not hard to figure out, right?
mm-mm.
And then you got Frank Clark, who's got nothing, and then Derek Hall, who you're not willing to play a ton yet, which I get it. Like, we kind of knew Derek Hall would be a bit of a work in progress, but you got to accelerate the timetable a little bit at this point, I think. But if you add Dre'Mont Jones into the equation, now you're talking.
Yeah. Now it works because even with Taylor on what he doesn't give you, you know he can at least and they've did this in Taylor snaps. If you look at his snap counts, a lot of it is in pass rush situations now. Where this past game, when you look at his splits, they weren't having him out there for seemingly there's a chance there's going to be a run here. Only really putting him out there, and he still got a lot of snaps, but trying to put him out there only there when he was in pass rush situations, a lot like they did last year. And that is a better fit for him. You can find some value from Taylor if you put him into that role because now his detriments and the things that he causes that are problems in the field start to be removed and covered up a bit. So I love the way they did that to not only maximize out maybe Dre'Mont Jones and get, because what this does too is you get him out of the 3-tech on early downs, where now his run defense that's a bit of a suckage on early downs out of the 3-tech gets removed. Leonard Williams gets fit in there next to him now in with Jaron Reed, and now you're bigger and badder on the inside against the run in addition to it. It's like a move that has a lot of different cascading goodnesses upon it and in taking that approach with it. So smart on the defensive coaching staff to utilize him this way. Give me some more Dre'Mont Jones coming off the edge.
Yeah, and Pete said we're going to do that more the rest of the way. I think he's kind of
Amen.
acknowledged that the Frank Clark thing, it didn't really, it's not working right now at the very least. We can say that. And I know they're going to give him more time, more opportunities, but at a certain point, I mean, we got more out of Bruce Irvin last year than I'm seeing from Frank Clark so far.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think he's not right now. He looks like a far diminished player from the Frank Clark that was here, and I don't know if that's the case. He looks really thin. Number one, I'll say that. Like he looks like he's lost weight. But we'll give him time. We'll see if maybe Frank can eventually give us a little bit of something from it. But even if it's just this adjustment, that's good enough adjustment in itself. I thought Jaron Reed played pretty good again against the run with his effort level. He continues to be pretty consistent every week overall. Edwards was all right. I liked a lot of Leonard Williams' game, highest graded player for you
Yeah.
by PFF. He didn't have a great game, but he was solid.
Yeah. Did you notice his sack came on a 6-man blitz, by the way?
Did it? I did know it was a game on a blitz. I didn't know if it was a 6-man. I saw Bobby in there, but I didn't see the sixth guy.
Yeah. A lot of people in the chat after the game were telling me, like, hey, 6-man blitz. And then we never saw it again.
It drives me crazy. They run it and they're super effective at it, and then they never go back to it. And I know why, Brendan. It just comes back to that fear of the big play, fear of getting the chunk play that you give up, right? But coach, we were effective. Yeah, we were effective this time, but next time they're going to hit us with a 9 round over the top. And it drives me nuts, man, because you do have so much. It is so fruitful for you when you go to it, but they just don't want to go to it. And a lot more of the 5-man blitzes when you brought them in this game. I saw. Don't know why they don't, Brendan. I don't. You have a young quarterback out there in Howell, for instance, in this game. I would have loved at times to maybe see if you could dial it in. I think they were thinking they were going to get a little bit more dink and dunked. And if you blitz a dink and dunk guy, that just means the dink and dunks are open because those are the hot routes. But would have loved to have seen
that kind of happened anyway.
Man, it did happen anyway. Well, that's where we come back to why me and you both still at the end. Just do it anyway. It's the thing you're trying to prevent is not prevented by staying on the 4-man fronts and dropping everybody into coverage. So, but that's where, again, Coach Carroll would come back to me and say, well, did you see all the times that Sam Howell had his chin up and he was looking deep and then had to come back to the second and third reads underneath? That's because I have Diggs on the back end eliminating that deep play. That's because I have my deep coverages on the back end preventing him from seeing that open. So he has to go back to the check down. But
yeah. Carroll at the VMAC tomorrow is going to be showing the clip from the end of the Broncos-Bills game where McDermott sends the house on 3rd and 10.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to be pointing like, see, I told you guys, see?
This is what happens every time. Okay, not every time. Almost all the time. Okay, not all the time, but it does happen. Yeah, no, that's absolutely what he'll do, man. He does not like those things, but we do it. It's been getting the most out of your personnel. It's what we do well. It's what your personnel does well that you have. I hope that, especially when it comes to playing the Niners, Brendan, in a couple weeks from now, really want to see that against Brock Purdy. Some of these kind of stack fronts, I'd love to see that against him. I don't know if we'll do it or not. We haven't done it yet in the twice we played him prior, but he's beat you twice, so maybe new tactics, right?
Yeah, I like it. Maybe we're saving it.
I save those tactics up. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5 dono and all your donations tonight, brother. I appreciate all of your support. If only Geno got the same sympathy that the other former New York Jet number 33 seems to get from the fan base. I was done with number 33 before it started. Yeah, it certainly has been an odd one with me watching the Geno discourse, man. And it's twisted and turned this year. It's just been a bit strange for me. Especially against Brendan because of how much support Russell got at times, in that if you brought up criticism there, like you could almost not say anything, but yet it's like let loose the floodgates with Geno, So it's a weird kind of situation versus the other one to me as I try to, make some sense of it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is either. I mean, obviously there's a lot of there's a lot of prior information with Geno that you didn't have with Russ. We had a decade of Geno wandering the league like Jules from Pulp Fiction or something.
Just go walk to Earth. What do you mean you go walk to Earth?
But yeah, I don't totally get it either. Maybe I do think that part of it is a sense of loyalty to Russ. Maybe they don't want to say good things about the guy who replaced him. I don't know. I think maybe there's a little bit of that going on. I think there's just a little bit of waiting for the other shoe to drop because this almost never happens, right? You don't have a quarterback who is irrelevant for a decade and then suddenly, oh, he's a really good quarterback now. And I think they're just this has to stop at some point, right? Like it just has to. But I mean, at a certain point, you kind of have to go, well, I can't believe this is happening, but it's happening. I can either sit here and deny that it's happening, or I can just be like, wow, I'm surprised this is happening, but it is. I'm going to adjust my position accordingly.
Yeah. I was just looking, seeing if that adjustment will come. And as we talked about at the top of the show, I don't think it's likely. I think people that are in the camp they're in with Geno, absent him raising a Lombardi trophy, anything just short of that, the opinion won't change. And one reason I'm really rooting for him to change that, to show these people, oh, you think you've got a read on who I am and what I am as a guy. And, he's already done it once, even to last year, where nobody would have said going into last year, this is a guy that'll be a comeback player of the year with this team, starting the 3 rookies on offense like you were. But he did it. And one of many reasons that I'm definitely still very pro Geno, but you're right. 33 does get a lot more benefit of the doubt. I will say, Garth, it's gotten louder here at times in recent weeks. There's been some cut ups there with him and shoulder tackling, no wrapping up or missing the sack here, where there's some people that start to get a little bit like, okay, come on now, come on.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this. I think the Jamal sympathy at this point is mostly because he suffered that really, really bad injury. And people
That's
feel
true.
bad for him more than they think, oh, he's going to be an all-pro again at some point this season. I think the belief in that is at an all-time low right now.
I think with even beyond that, just even like the fingers he's had where they've like fused together. It's like it's very gnarly, where you go, oh man, he's had to go through that. It's sort of like he's had to go through the pain and suffering there. It's a little bit easier maybe to give him some of that sympathy. You're right about that. But thank you, Garth. Well said on your part, my man. Addis the Gamer, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, sup, guys? Just wanted to say Boye Mafe is that guy. Well, we're great timing on this donation as we are covering the defensive line. Let's talk a little bit about Boye Mafe. What's Boye Mafe's upside, Brendan? Where's this kid going?
I mean, if there's upside beyond what he has this year, which seems possible, I've said this before, Boye Mafe has not been playing football for that long.
Yeah.
I think he barely knew what football was until like later in his high school life. It's kind of like Hakeem Olajuwon, who had never touched a basketball until he was like 17. It's almost like that. It's not quite that crazy, but it's like that. And the consistency is really the thing that stands out with him. It's like every game he's just good. Some games he's a little better than others, but every game he's showing up, every game he's beating the one-on-ones. Now that he's seen more double teams, still not a ton, but more double teams because of Uchenna Nwosu's injury, he's still producing. It's really wild. And this feels like the best case scenario for him so far. What we've seen from him, this feels like the best case scenario for his career when we drafted him. And I was really excited to draft him. And look at what we got.
Yeah, I agree. I thought his upside would be a guy who get you around 10 sacks a year and play phenomenal run defense off the edge would be, what you'd get. And that maybe wouldn't be that guy that could be that almost a sub-star rusher at 15, 16, 17 sacks a year and sort of flirt with that. But now he looks like he's that guy that's going to flirt in that area. So you've got a dominant edge at that point. As I called him this last Sunday, I think he's become a cornerstone guy on this defense a lot, along with Devin Witherspoon. Part of this future, no doubt. And who knows where the upside finishes off at Addis, as he is only in the second year. And as Brendan says, I mean, we can't undersell that enough when you got guys that are new to a position, having recently been there, like a Tariq to cornerback, or a guy new to football like Boye. I mean, even Witherspoon's that way. A guy that didn't come to football, but late into where he finally, into I think high school, finally started to play at the end. So those guys tend to have a little more upside because they have a little bit less of that. They've tapped it all out. They've reached their ceiling point because they've already played so much football. So you already know what you kind of have with them. So who knows where it finishes off as Addis, but he played a great game, and great to see again, Brendan. The key with him this year, as I've told you a few times before, was how can he find some effectiveness getting to the inside in his pass rush? He showed last year he can get to the outside. He showed you had the dip, the bend, the explosion off the snap. He's got the double hand swipe move to the outside that he combos that with. What's the inside move? What's the counter to the inside so that the tackles can't overset to the outside and eliminate that from him like they did throughout last year? Why he wasn't more of an effective rusher. And he's found, I love that stunt play, Brendan, because he starts off the rip. And when guys stunt a lot of times off the snap, you'll see the edge curl around the defensive tackle from the jump. So snap and they curl. With him, he got upfield. And what that did is it affected the guard, because now the guard sees that off the corner of his eye. And then he goes, okay, I'm going to stay on Leonard Williams here. I'm going to stay. It's not there's no stand. And then he slanted back underneath because he had the quickness and speed to still get around, even taking a couple steps up the field first. Just a little, I don't know if that's a BT Jordan addition, is a little extra technique to the stunt there, but a great little, just to me, detail in what he did. And he's finding those inside moves now, which is part of what's making him so even much more effective as a pass rusher this year.
Yeah, it's just great to see stunts in general, because last year and in previous years, I feel like we were one of the teams that just did not run them. Everything was just straight up. And now, like that sack that Mafe got in this game was basically a stunt, or it, mimicked a stunt, in effect. So yeah, I think that stuff is great. And I think that, I don't know about like Mafe anymore. If you were to take a look at all the edge players in 2022, obviously Hutchinson's number one. But after that, like who's number two, if not Mafe, as who you would take for your team for the next 10 years?
Which is saying something, because Trayvon Walker was the number one overall pick in that draft.
Yeah, I mean, I don't watch a lot of Jags games, but I haven't heard that much about him.
He's been solid. I don't think that he's done like the run here that Maffe's just put together, or as good against the run necessarily as Maffe is. So I think you're right. I think he's emerged as the second best guy, and right there lockstep, quite frankly, probably with Hutchinson. They're sort of different players, but definitely there in the level of impact that he's able to bring, being a complete player, well-rounded, not just get you pass rush, but can give you everything. And part of what makes him so dynamic. Let's talk about linebackers. Let's start first with the bad before we get to the good, which inside linebackers I'm talking here. And that's going to be first with Jordan Brooks. Brooks in a year right now where we're paying really close attention to what he's going to do and whether or not he's going to be worthy of a $17, $18 million a year deal. How was your assessment of Jordan Brooks in this game?
I think he played like a guy who missed most of practice this week with an injury.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put it that way. It was not one of his better games.
Yeah.
I don't think he did anything over the top terrible. Like the two big plays to the backs out of the backfield, those are not on him. That was on really, I don't even really want to put those plays on Mafe and Dre'mont. They were just kind of broken plays that got away from us.
Yeah.
So those are not on the Brooks and Wagner as far as I'm concerned. But overall, Brooks didn't do anything to really stand out to me. He was just kind of there. He wasn't as involved. He's usually much more involved in the run game at the very least. It's bizarre to have him play a full game and only get 3 tackles. Like, that is very rare. And I'm not even saying I'm a big tackle hound. I'm not a guy who thinks that tackles are some amazing end-all be-all of whether or not you're an effective player. But usually he's involved more than that. There were some coverage issues in this game. And I mean, regardless of the fact that Brooks has been better in coverage this year, he's still never going to be a great cover linebacker. So games like that are going to happen. Moments like that are going to happen. So yeah, I think you saw a little bit of a back to earth moment for Brooks. I didn't hate it, but he was definitely the lesser of the 2 inside linebackers in this game for me.
Yeah, it's the run defense part of it that's the big issue I have. Like you say, the broken plays are one thing. He did have one in coverage he gave up that was just to me, startling example of why he struggles in coverage. The guy comes off the snap, gives him a little juke move, and loses Jordan Brooks. And they had like an all 22 shot they showed where he lost him by 4 yards, where Brooks is just not even near step for step with him in it. And I get the coverage stuff. That's not going to change. It's been here. It's always going to be here with him. But to be not as good in the run department, the run stuffing element, to be, tackling numbers were poor out of this game by PFF. I thought his instincts were strange. The tackling effort at times was a little light. He did a couple of shorter Jamal Adams shoulder tackle specials where I'm not going to wrap up. I'm just going to stick my shoulder in there and hope that gets it done. When it comes down to making the assessment on this guy, man, with paying 17, 18 million, as we've said it for a couple of weeks on this, it's going to be a hard bite down on that one to make that kind of deal for this guy for everything he brings to the field, both good and bad. If you're going to pay the 18 million, I want a complete player for that. I don't need a star, but I want a complete player. And he's taken steps forward in his game this year, but to me, not enough at this point, where if the year ended right now, I would have to let him walk at this point. There's other players I'd rather keep on this team, especially considering he'll be the most costly out of anybody to bring back.
Yeah, unless we're completely off on our evaluation of the money he's going to ask for, which I really don't think I am.
No,
I don't. But honestly, even if it's like 12 million, I'm like, I think I can do better with that money. I really do. Like, it's not a high value position anymore. You can get Bobby for much cheaper, I think, because he's shown to a certain extent it's not really about the money for him anymore, unless he changes his mind this upcoming offseason, which he could. But the fact that he had the season he had for the Rams last year and took 5.5 with us tells me that he's kind of over the money thing. He just wants to play football.
Yeah.
So if I can get Bobby Wagner for half or a third and on a 1-year deal of what I can get Brooks for, then I don't think there's any decision here. Like, Wagner's still playing better than Brooks this year.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I agreed. Even in this game, he's got to beat all the way down the line as far as the grades go. And you get half there, you bring a young guy there. And then the thing Bobby gives you too is a young guy who needs to learn the ropes, has Bobby right next to him at all times to lead him and guide him in the right direction. I would much more be in favor of that at this point. Getting the good side of this, I thought Bobby Wagner played a really, really strong game amongst a year of him playing strong in just about every single contest this year. Being a complete player across the board to my eyes, Brendan, active in the run game, but then also showing you some of what some people said he doesn't have an ability to bring. And that's an effect as in coverage as well. He jumped a couple routes. He's had a couple of breakups this year in the center of the field on receivers. He did it in the Browns game. He did it in this game, I think, a couple times as well. He's been just so good this year, so far beyond what our expectation was. Brendan, talk a little bit about Bobby and what he's been able to do here so far this year and in this game.
Yeah, Bobby was really good in this game. Every game he's going to have one play where you're like, man, he is so slow now. Like he had that one play where he was trying to cover the
Gibson.
Gibson out of the backfield over, going to the sideline, and you're like, wow, that 5 years ago that would not have stood. That would not be happening. But every other play, he's just always doing his job. He leads the team in tackles. Like you said, he made some plays in coverage. Half a sack too, by the way. So he actually got back involved there as well. So I thought Wagner played an excellent all-around game. It's really just that one play where he kind of looks bad on. And I mean, to a certain point, that's just their offense scheming your defense on that play. When you've got Wagner trying to cover Gibson one-on-one, it's not going to go well for you. Like that's just them winning that battle. So I think Wagner's played phenomenal this season. He's done extraordinarily well against the run. And there's a lot on his shoulders right now, too, because the two hyper elite run defenders on this team were Wagner and Nwosu now. So there's a lot on Wagner's shoulders. And other than that one drive in the fourth quarter where Washington busted off like those back-to-back 15-yard runs, they didn't really run the ball on us. And one of their long runs, the Sam Howell 15-yard run, ended in a fumble anyway. So another game where we're effective against the run, and Washington basically abandoned their run game by for most of this one.
They did it indeed, Brendan. And that's, I think, a testament to both how you stopped it and how they thought they could attack you. That was a bad play with Bobby. We do have to remember with Antonio that he was a receiver in college who got like 25 attempts. So that is like him trying to cover kind of a receiver type. A very pure hybrid between running back and receiver, I'd say, is Gibson in so many ways. But you're right. There's the occasional bad play where you go, "Ooh, boy, yeah, he's definitely slowed down a little bit," but not consistently what you see across the board as he is show up all over the place, and especially in his ability to stop the run and clean that part of the game, help to clean that part of the game up for us. He's been consistent in every single game this year. Really love what Bobby's brought to the table, and do want to see him back at this point, Brendan. No doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
NR, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, was Jackson Smith-Njigba's proof of concept for the screen game?
I mean, obviously he runs those plays better than any receiver we've had in recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think he's got it's a skill set that's just not Tyler and DK. I think DK can occasionally, you could throw a bow. That's just, he's so big though, asking him to do that, like it's not really what he does. But this is JSN, a little bit more of what he can do. Even with JSN though, I think I'd argue Eskridge would probably be your best guy to run that stuff, ideally. But the team doesn't seem to know what to do with Eskridge at this point, so it's going to be JSN.
Yeah, his new nickname is Healthy Scratch.
Healthy Scratch. There we go. Yeah. It's a good nickname.
Or in basketball, they call it DNP, coach's decision.
Yeah, I guess he's just there as insurance, and if one of our guys get injured, then they've got a deep receiving core to call upon at that point.
I mean, that's kind of happened. Derek Young got hurt again, and we should shut him down for the year, I think.
I agree, especially understanding that JSN is still here at this point, and not JSN, but Eskridge is. So, if there's some issue ongoing still with Derek, just let it go and call it a day there. But it was good to see him run the screen game. They're running it more effectively. They're blocking it up better. That's the part you see where it just seems like there's some more space for that bubble screen guy to work through, where sometimes JSN's gotten at times this year. There's been a guy on top of him after the catch. So I think it's execution as much as anything, but it's also been them timing it up where it's on these blitzes, where you get the 6-man blitz from either the Ravens or from this past week, the Commanders, and then they don't have those extra guys down the field to deal with the screen game. One less defender there to make that tackle, to free it up a little bit more. And that's how you take advantage of those blitzes if they're going to proliferate their game plan against your offense with so many of those calls. Go to that as much as you can and slow them down. Make them have to be a little hesitant. And that's what that does serve to do over time, if you can run it effectively.
Right. I agree.
Part of the thing too is we haven't ever run it effectively. And our teams can anticipate we didn't run it effectively. So then teams didn't have to prepare for it or even play like we'd ever call it. Now they're at least going to have to probably start to do that, which should then free up other parts of the offense that they're able to cinch down on when they don't have to pay attention to the other parts like that. Hopefully, ideally,
Yeah.
right, Brendan?
Yeah, hopefully that game represented a turning point and not just a fluke.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so, NR. I hope you're right on that one. Thank you for that donation. Let's talk a bit about this secondary, Brendan, as we get into this kind of final parts of this game. Witherspoon, has he wrapped up Defensive Rookie of the Year here in your mind? Because he's kind of starting to get. I know we got a lot of games left, maybe not fully wrapped it up, but he's putting the ribbon on. He's taking out the packaging. He's got the scissors in hand. So okay, maybe it's not completely gifted at this point, but he's down the road, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of earning it, it seems like he's there, right? I can't imagine a defensive rookie like when was the last time we had a defensive rookie in the NFL period be this effective, be this good? Like I think he's better than Sauce was last year, for
Mhm.
just as an example, and that's going to be the big comparison people make because it's another defensive back, but he's doing it all, and I know his tackling has slipped a little bit over the last two games. Like he missed another one in this most recent game, but it's hard to imagine a defensive rookie who missed the entire offseason basically being this good. It's tough.
It is, and he's probably a little bit of a rookie wall you start to hit at this point of the year, right? You're a little bit. You're getting. I know he got most of training camp out, and he was out the first game, but it's probably a little bit of wear down. But he's been overall very consistent tackler. Almost had another interception in this game, Brendan. He's got to get to work on his hands this offseason. He'd have already, I think, like 4 or 5 interceptions if he could catch. So got another hand that was right in his hands. He jumped throughout 3 passes defensed in this game. He shows another thing. It's like Bobo, where every week they do something else different and new that they hadn't done the prior week. Well, this week we got to see him go in there with Hal trying to do his I'm going to act like Tim Tebow and keep, grinding forward like a fullback after I've already got the first down. And he just rips the ball free, something we've not yet seen from him. And it's just every week he kind of
Right.
does something new or different that's unique that shows his value as a player.
Yeah, he's coming at this absolutely the right way. I love he's one of the most entertaining cornerbacks to watch, I feel like.
Oh, he
Is
is.
another element of this here. I just hope enough people are watching it to understand what's going on here with him. I think they did credit him with the game time touchdown though in coverage, which
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's true or not, but he is the guy getting pinned on that, which is too bad because it does really kind of diminish the game that he had in some ways. But yeah, it's I'm very excited to see where this goes. And he was the guy who was not out there against the Rams in week 1, and now he's going to get a chance at that team this week.
It's going to be a very big part of the battle. We'll be previewing this on your channel here on Thursday, but a big part of the battle is you have him in the ranks to deal with those slot guys. Because the one thing you can say about him in every game he's played so far is there has yet to be a slot receiver for the opposition this year in facing the Seattle Seahawks outside of that Rams game where we got decimated by the position that has been able to flourish with Witherspoon there in the slot. Every single game he's been able to put the clamps down. This week it was it's not Dotson, but it's the other kid, Samuel. I mean, Samuel
Yes,
wasn't able to get anything
Curtis.
done in this game. Curtis, Samuel Curtis. So hopefully he can keep that up this week. We're going to need to lean on him as you're going to have basically 2 slot guys on the field at any one time here with Puka and Cooper in the way that they're running this. And so going to need that twitchiness, going to need that bounce, going to need that short area burst for this upcoming matchup. Guy who I think had his best game of the year so far and who's really been starting to come on strong now, finding his footing is Tariq Woolen. For my money, I thought that he was aces in this game, had a breakup, was tight in coverage on a sideline route to the other side of things. Really happy with where he's been progressing forward here this year. We're a little bit of a rough opening beginning there, but he's coming along, isn't he?
Yeah. I think this game was an indication that he might be over the surgery that definitely was affecting him earlier this year. I think that's fair to say. I got no problem acknowledging that his issues were probably because of the surgery that he had. And yeah, I thought he played great. I think he allowed 1 completion on 6 targets, I think, in this game. He had the pass breakup, like you said. He recovered a fumble. I thought he played. He had 1 tackle attempt where he kind of got run over by the tight end. Other than that, I thought he played a really good game. And he's probably maybe he'll just never be a very good tackler, and maybe that's just something you got to live with. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that, but the other parts of his game are starting to come along really well after a rough first half of the season, up and down. but he's starting to look more like the guy from last season for sure. Was really excited to see that.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about the tackling. Receivers that become cornerbacks, you're naturally just going to worry about them a little bit. And I know we had Sherman who was able to be very rugged as a tackler, as a receiver convert, but I think he's a little bit of the exception to the rule. Trayvon Diggs, for instance, with the Cowboys, another guy like that, where tackling's not always been his thing. And he's a receiver convert back at Alabama who went to cornerback position. But they didn't like him on that. They gave him like a 25 grade by PFF and won in the tackling. But he was awesome in coverage. The coverage skills have come back to the forefront. He looks sticky out there. And the combination of him and Witherspoon and then Trey Brown working in, who I thought Trey Brown had a good game, where is one of those moments as a cornerback where you're going to give up some catches. But if you look at all the catches, his hand's an inch away. He's not giving up a catch where he's not making a play on the ball or getting his head turned around. His head's turned around, full extension. Ball, like if you're doing slow motion, the ball would be just going past his outstanding fingertips. And then Terry McLaurin makes the catch, on a slant route or something. I thought he played still a good game. He still had a really good year. It's just that he just, receiver made a great play. Quarterback put it into just the perfect throw in the perfect spot on some of those throws. And they were slant routes. They weren't short. They weren't big plays hitting him down the field. It was just short little routes they were hitting him with.
He certainly stands out the least of the three cornerbacks, but he played fine. I think he's actually playing much better this year than I would have expected. I kind of feel like he was a forgotten man coming into the season, but he's been, I think, a significant net positive.
I do too. And he's allowed you to be able to work in Witherspoon to that slot because you don't have just an empty space out there at the corner if you don't have him out there on the outside. It gives your ability to really make everything as versatile, much like having Leonard Williams frees up Dre'Mont Jones to go to the outside and the edge. Having those things kind of fits things through right like that. We talked a bit about Jamal Adams. I don't think we have to cover much more with that. He is where he is, and I think the injuries he's still trying to get back to full shape and full run. It's going to be hard to make that assessment of him, I think, throughout the year because of that. There's some certain things that are bothersome, but it's just the full assessment of him gets tough because we know he is coming back off, like you say, an injury that has taken a lot of players and eliminated their careers, not able to come back from it. What do you make of Quandre Diggs's game? Wasn't well rated by PFF. For instance, you have that broken play to Brian Robinson on the L22. It would seem as though not only did he not get over there to help out in that play, but he also didn't pick up Terry McLaurin coming through on a crossing route, it would seem like, as the single high safety there. What did you think of Diggs's game, and where is, your assessment of Diggs as a player? Another one of those guys that we're going to have to maybe make a very difficult decision on this upcoming offseason.
I don't really think it's that difficult right now. I got to be honest. Like we got half a year now, and he's not really doing much of anything, right? Like, what's he done? He had the garbage time interception against the Giants, and it's not like this team is not generating pressure. This team is generating plenty of quarterback pressure overall. There's been some bad games, but there's probably been opportunities for him to make plays. Like the second to last play of the game for the Washington offense, Diggs has a chance to ice it there with the interception, and he got caught out of kind of a little bit of a funny position, but I don't mean to necessarily rag on him for that play specifically, but it's what I'm saying. He's not making any of those plays this year at all. And I mean, we're not getting our money's worth out of Adams, but at least Adams is doing some things that are good. Diggs, like what is he really bringing to the table here that, like I said, Jarek Reed wouldn't bring if you put him in that position? Maybe we'd be getting beat over the top 5 times a game for big, long touchdowns if he wasn't out there, but I doubt it.
It's hard with that assessment, isn't it? Because it's like, you can see the All-22 a little bit and you can do a little bit, but it's like, okay, so you're taking this thing away that they don't try, but they never try it. Is it, you just go, are they trying to attack other things in our defense from really getting at that? And there's going to be a quote I want to read you as we wrap this up here a little later, just a little bit on this in regards to this very point. But like you, I'm not seeing a lot of the same thing. And I understand the erasing over the top. I can see in those moments, like I say, when you watch on the All-22, you're reading the quarterback's head and you can see the head go up. That was the whole thing with Drew Brees. You could always see the small Drew Brees when he's looking deep. His little chin would go up like that on those throws where he's trying to look deeper down the field. And you see his chin go up looking. And so those are times where maybe Quandre is eliminating those reads where that's where the enemy wanted to attack and go at this defense. But the money you are spending, you do wonder with it, especially the total money you're spending on the safety position. I mean, just take Julian Love. You could flip Julian Love over to free safety, spend $4 million, $5 million on him next year, versus the cost you're putting in. Is that, potentially a better option. And so Diggs is certainly one of those guys I'm not necessarily down on, but I'm also not understanding necessarily if we're getting the full feel of his impact out there, especially because this team went that direction of saying, no, we'll build back to front, Brendan. We're going to build this defense that way. We're going to be in this new model. First, maybe what some of us have looked to have a call upon, which is more investment into the defensive line, that would be more beneficial maybe at times.
Yeah, I right now it would be a pretty easy decision for me this offseason. Now he's got 8 games left, and there are going to be some games that give him a great opportunity to reverse this narrative. Like,
It
could you
does.
imagine if he makes some big plays in the Niners game or the Eagles game or Cowboys game? It's completely flipped that. But as of right now, it's like there's no impact. I'm not saying he's playing badly, but there's no impact.
As you say, it's not a final conclusion. There's a lot of time here for stuff to still happen to where you can start to see and feel that here's what he is bringing to the field. And I had hoped Quandre would come out there and be able to have his best year this year. And maybe this is the time where he will now be able to shine and come out and make a couple of those game-changing plays. Lord knows he's gotten to Stafford a few times in recent years, so this wouldn't be the worst time for him in this upcoming matchup to find that, Brendan. But I think, again, as he's one of these guys where you're looking at how can we create cap space? How can we create cap space to help other parts of the team that we need to build up on? This may be one of the places you make that choice is if it fits the type and continues on the current trek that it's on right now as it stands. Real quickly, I thought Dickinson punted a pretty good game. Wasn't anything over the top on his side. He was just solid, and that's fine. He was good. Jason Myers, though, a guy we had been very worried about being that he was due for a down year with his good year, down year thing that he's done throughout his career, is actually now starting to turn this into a very, very good year here, making 5 field goals in this game, I think it was. Hit all 7 of his kicks in total. Jason's been money well spent, that $5 million so far, huh?
So far, we're looking pretty good here. Made all of them with relative ease, it felt like. And we're definitely trending in the right direction with him. And I would say that as the year goes on, hopefully the offense gets better to where we're not kicking so many field goals like that. So
figure something out in the red zone.
Yeah, but for now, we need those stupid 3 points. We need those stupid 3 points when we get the drive going partially. So it's been nice. It's been good. He hasn't cost us any games yet. I don't think you can pin anything on him.
No.
So far this season, he's missed kicks. He's had bad kicks, but also Chris Stoll, PFF released their midseason All-Pro team, and they put Chris Stoll first team.
Ooh, look at that! Hell yeah, let's go.
So we, I guess we hit the jackpot.
Offensive Rookie of the Year, Chris Stoll.
I mean, they need to make a special teams Rookie of the Year, right? Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, why can't they get no love? I don't get it. Why we got to make them the redhead stepchild? Come on, give them some love, Brendan.
Yeah, I mean, it's him and Jake Moody, and Moody blew the Cleveland game, so what are you going to say?
Every one of Moody's kicks is like, even the ones he makes. He made one in that game where it like went over the top of the crossbar, and it was like they're like, well, we think that's kind of. It looks like he's going to be a journey on every kick for that Niners team going forward.
Yeah. Apparently, if you watch football with Adam Carolla, he inevitably goes on some rant about how the uprights need to be taller.
Oh, he's got laser beams. He's big on the laser beams. He wants laser beams to the sky.
Yeah, like if you watch football with him, he'll start just going on about that until you really don't want to talk to him anymore because he just goes on for way too long.
And he's been on that one for 20 years, bro. So that's been one that's been stuck in his craw for a long time. Where it's like, come on, man, they're not going to change it. Just let it go, let it go. I want to read you a quote here, and I want you to make sense of it. And I want you to make sense of this quote first. Let me set this up. The Seattle Seahawks changed their defense 2 years ago from what was a very simplified cover 3 scheme to what they mainly ran. And Coach Carroll said, we're going to make our changes here. We've had to change our ways. We waited too long to make this change, get away from the simplicity, get more to a complicated. He didn't say that, but that's what you're thinking. I mean, logically, if you're going from one thing, you're going to go to something else. The thing to go to would be complication where there was simplicity before. I'm going to read you a quote here that is from Eric Bieniemy as he was leading up to this game this past week. And with what I just told you, explain to me and make sense of this quote to me in the understanding of what we think this defense is trying to do and what we think this defense is trying to be. We've got to go out and execute our offense better than they execute their defense, Bieniemy said. They're not a defense that's going to cause any confusion. because they're going to play straight up and try to beat you with their best. Our job is to make sure that we can go out and do what we do best.
Yeah, that was the quote that circulated a lot leading into this game. I saw this one all over Instagram and X. A lot of people talking about this one, so I'm definitely familiar. And it's true, right? Even though the Seahawks are doing some things differently this year on defense, they are. There have been some updates over the last couple of years. It's still not a team that disguises their coverage very much. I think we're right near the bottom, if not the bottom, in disguising coverages. We are literally at the bottom in 6-man plus blitzes. So the statement is still true. It's not as true as it would have been 2 years ago, but it is still very much the case. And I'm sure this is how most offensive coordinators think going into these games.
And it's discouraging to me, Brendan, because it starts to feel a little sleight of handish in this whole changeover to the new scheme. It starts to even feel less like a hybridization and more like we want to keep the old scheme and drape it with a simple, very thinly sheet of veiling drape over the top of it to make it look like something else. And part of my assessment here with this team and in the future of this team and where we look at them is the adaptation, the updating, what we've seen kind of go on the offense for the most part, and looking for that change to occur on the defense. And I've long said that I feel like this rebuild and where we go is going to be driven a lot by Carroll's hopefully lack of reluctance, hopefully an owning of the fact that he's got to update this defense and update some of his ways to find new footing in this modern NFL. But I start to worry a little bit when I see quotes about that or the stats that you just quoted yourself into thinking, well, maybe we're not going to get to that stage of things. And is that going to be a single inhibiting factor? Because I do truly believe that that defense of the old, that simplistic style, that we're just going to line up and play it straight up thing, got beat, got solved, and good teams will continue to solve and beat it as we go forward. Good offenses will be able to do that. And we haven't exactly had this year in the offenses we faced the toughest of the toughest that we've had to deal with. And that is kind of going to be coming up a little bit more as we go on to the depths of the season a bit. And so that's where that challenge comes in. There's so much of this, Brendan, in this assessment of individual players and scheme that I'm going to be making on. But if I see simplisticness going forward, Brendan, if I see this defense going through and we've got now what I think they expect good offenses that will be able to take it to this defense if they're this simple, it's going to make me really reluctant to believe that we're going to have the defensive makings to take this team to a contending team into the future. Say nothing of this season, because I think that type of defensive styling has topped out. Do you feel the same way?
Well, one counter that I can think of, if I were to present it, and it's not what I believe, but one counter that I would present is that fundamentally, Pete's cover 3 is designed to prevent big plays, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why he loves it so much. He thinks it prevents big plays. That's become kind of the modus operandi for most defenses in the NFL. In fairness to him, most defenses have become so obsessed with taking away the big play that a lot of these offenses have given up trying to make big plays. We talk about this sometimes. There are a couple of offenses in the NFL that are built around a lot of big plays. And it's very different from how it was even 5 years ago. Teams are sitting back in these shells.
Do those teams layer in that protection though with complexity? Meaning we show you we're going to protect, but we also show our hand that we're protecting. Some teams will show you a stack front that they drop into, or a single high that becomes a cover 2, or as you say, there's what you see is what, like you mentioned on the stat of what you see is what you get with the coverage that we show prior to the snap. And so that would be my thing with it is I'm okay if you want to protect against the deep ball, but that still doesn't mean that there doesn't need to be complication in there. And the drive towards a simplistic nature defensively is one that hasn't necessarily borne a lot of fruit for you in the recent history. And I don't think it's going to bear a ton of fruit for you into the future if that's where you're going to lean into over and over again. And this team seems to fall into that habit a little bit too often, I think, of leaning towards simplicity when all else fails. And it's like, go, especially like we said, Brendan, here on the 6-man blitzes, you found effectiveness to it. Every time I see, much like our offense, when Waldron's creative and moving guys pre and post snap and being at his best where it doesn't feel so stilted and every A and B gap runs and everything's predictable offensively, you're flowing, you're going. And likewise, defensively, when you're bringing those stack fronts, that Giants game, blitzing from every angle and bringing this guy here and bringing that guy there and then dropping out in the coverage, you're maximally effective when you utilize it. But then just you decide to go away from it. It's like that. There's that pull always to then slide back to simplicity, slide back to protective, slide back to playing it straight up. And that's the part I don't understand. It'd be one thing if you ran it and it failed. It'd be one thing if you ran it and you got bit on the back end on big plays getting hit over the top. But that running back play to Brian Robinson, that's a 4-man front, Brendan. It's a 4-man front play that occurs on with Jamal blitzing. So you're bringing a 5-man blitz on that. You still have a lot of guys in the back end, and yet you still give up the big play. You still end up the thing you're trying to prevent is not then prevented. And that's the part that, as much as anything, drives me most crazy about it, is it's not actually accomplishing the thing that it necessarily is suiting out to accomplish.
Yeah, there was one play in this game that I wish it had worked because it almost worked. Witherspoon faked that he was blitzing at the snap, and then he looped back out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know what play I'm talking about. It was on the left side. Like, he's at the line of scrimmage. He loops in like he's blitzing, and then at the snap, he goes back, and Howell throws it right at him because he thinks, oh, he's blitzing. I have an easy completion over there. But the throw was so bad, Witherspoon couldn't get to it. And I was like, man, if he had just made that
I do
play.
remember the play, yeah. I think I think what happened is he short-armed it, like Howell was in the middle of his throwing motion and then went, oh, he's there, right? Like he kind of realized halfway into the throwing motion and then just sort of, because he dirted it bad. It was like,
yeah,
it wasn't even close. Yeah.
But I was thinking to myself, man, if he had picked that off, maybe Pete would have like latched onto that and been like, wait a minute here. Wait a minute. But no. But yeah, you see stuff like that and you're like, this seems to work in small doses. And I understand there is diminishing returns. The more you go to something, the less effective it's going to be. But I don't think we're at the saturation point.
Not when you're 30, not when you're 32nd in the league and running 6-man blitzes. You can't say you're at saturation point when you're 32nd in anything in the league.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I do agree. I don't like it. I mean, maybe it's a question of like baby steps. Maybe this team is just moving way too slowly for any of us, but they are moving. I mean, there have been some changes over the last 2 years. Maybe it's a question of he feels like he doesn't have the right players to do it. I don't know why. I mean, he's got these 2 killer man corners.
Yeah.
He's got Adams, who is a versatile safety. Now, Diggs is the definition of a one-dimensional safety. Maybe that's a limiting factor here, but you chose to keep Diggs a year and a half ago. So,
well, even in Diggs' case, though, he's got the background as a strong safety in the slot. We haven't asked him to do it, but he's supposed to have the skill set in his bag to do it. You know, you just never tried to have him do it. You've never done the split safety look. You just put him back as a single high.
Right. So I don't know. I do think that in game, it's hard to not lean on your instinct, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can plan to do things a certain way, but once you're in the game, even as a coach, you're not even playing, you're coaching. You just kind of lean on your instinct because things are happening so quickly. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's kind of how it goes. Pete has this plan to do things a particular way, and then the game starts and he's going back to the stuff that he's been doing for decades. And quite frequently, we have these coaches who we know are smart, who we know are good, who do ridiculous things in game at the weirdest time. And we're just wondering how could you possibly think that was a good idea? And I think most of the time the answer is they didn't have enough time to really think about it. Like, even though they're making millions of dollars, they still end up doing things that they 2 minutes later realize, wow, why did I do that? Like Sean McDermott sending 8 at Wilson on 3rd and 10 when they were out of field goal range last night. Yeah. I think if you asked him 2 minutes later, it would be like, why did I do that? That was so dumb. That made no sense. Why did I blitz 8 guys? Yeah. And you see stuff like that all the time in the NFL, and it makes these very smart people look very stupid. And I think it's just a matter of they're not playing, but they're in the middle of all the chaos. Whereas I'm sitting at home in my living room and I'm able to see exactly how much time's left. I see the play clock. I see the game clock. I see exactly where we are on the field. Yeah. And I'm able to, it almost makes me wonder if maybe this is why some coaches go to the booth. You can actually see things from a bird's eye view.
Yeah. Well, and you're also the mix of all that emotion on the field with everybody, you know,
right.
Like you can have that quiet thought, quiet brain.
But yeah, that's just a long-winded way of me saying maybe it's just a mistake. Maybe it's just something where he wants to do things a different way, but the game day comes and he can't help himself.
I think it's a good point. The phrase comes to mind is old habits die hard.
Mhm.
And, when you got that built in for so many years since the 80s, this way of coaching defense, it's going to be very hard to pivot off of that. But I believe it in my bones, Brendan, that if Coach Carroll wants to find success, if he wants to find the mountaintop once again, he's not going to do it by operating off of what he did in the old. He'll do it by taking what still works from the old and modifying within the new. And that's going to determine the success of this team going into the future with Coach Carroll as a coach. And it's one thing I'm not sure, like a lot of the parts we talk about, maybe a common theme in this game, where, be in this season, in this show, where this team at, where some of these players at, it's still in very much I'm not sure, we're assessing this and trying to still figure it out kind of thing. And the defense is right along with that. Is this defensive change working? It's making progress, like you said, but is it going to work in the long term? Ultimately, that's going to be determined by, I think, Coach Carroll willing to adapt, update, change some things.
Yeah. And I mean, we have to judge the defense at a certain point, right? Like, this defense is, I think, 22nd in the league right now in points allowed, which is bad. Like, that's not even below average. That's bad. I get these comments from some people saying, hey, our defense is great this year. Our defense has been great. I'm like, no, not collectively. Maybe this game they were great. Maybe that game they were great. But as a whole, it's a bad defense. It's slightly better than last year.
Yeah. And it's as well at 22nd, having played 3 games that had backup quarterbacks in, and Daniel Jones. So 4 of those games were 3 backups, and you got to play a Daniel Jones Giants team that was trash. So, like, that's part of why we got to have this 4 or 5 game stretch coming up where you get legit opponents. We're going to really get to see where this defense is, really legit offenses who can absolutely put up the 30, 35, 37 points that can take this defense from being one that's sitting at 22nd right now, that by the end of the year finds itself now nudging itself back into that 27, 28th range if they can't turn some things around with it. So, it'll be the interesting thing to track and monitor here, Brendan, but it's a big key, not just for this year to me, Brendan, but for the long-term hopeful success of this team, that this adjustment comes into play, because I've still not seen it brought into play, and it's making me nervous. I'm getting a little bit worried that, again, it's that draping theory, that they just sort of draped it over the top. It still is what it is beneath, but there's this thin veneer over the top that sort of fools us a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard countless stories through the years about coaches who care more about doing things their way than even winning.
Yeah,
They
I've heard the same.
Like, I mean, this is an old story, but the back when the Steelers, before the Super Bowl era, the Steelers, they had a strategy where every game, first play of the game, they would run fullback dive. And it got to the point where opposing defenses just put 11 guys in the box, and it didn't matter. They kept running fullback dive. And the owner eventually said, hey, can we do something else on the first play, please? Can we throw it deep? So they did. The next game, they got a touchdown, but one of the offensive linemen had false started. And later the head coach admitted, I told my player to intentionally false start because I didn't want the owner thinking that he knew better than me coming down and trying to tell me what to do.
Ego and pride, man. That's definitely a big thing that exists in football and these people at times. And I think you're on the button with this one, where it's one that causes them to do things that even goes against their own best interests. And that's the part I think you're talking about that makes me worried here, that we have a little bit of this at play. And I'm not certain it is. Like you said, this is going to be an assessment that we make throughout the whole part of the year. But this was the thing I was looking to be kicking into gear this year. We saw Waldron's offense kick into gear in year 2. We're supposed to be into year 2 of this defense. We have Adams, we have Wagner, guys that can blitz well, Witherspoon that can blitz well. You've got the cover guys now to get this done. You have the players to make this new change work, but you've got to go to the new change. And that's a big part of this upcoming season for me, Brendan, in tracking this team and what they do. Phoebe Moore Seahawks, thank you for the $2 donation. It says Chris Stoll is from the factory you'd expect. Who is he from?
I'm not sure. I thought he was Penn State, but maybe that was Jonathan Sutherland.
Okay.
I know one of our special teamers was from Penn State. Let me look this up. Chris Stoll. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Oh yeah. He was Penn State. There you go.
Penn State. All right. There we go. Chris Stoll.
So he's from those Pennsylvania steel factories. Is that the implication here?
They're the long snapping steel factories. No, they produce. They've got a long line of long snappers. They start them out about 5 out there in the Pennsylvania fields. Thank you though, Phoebe, for the $2 donation. And Chris Stoll, man, offensive rookie of the year. We got the defensive rookie of the year in Witherspoon, offensive rookie of the year in Stoll. That's how this is going to work.
I like it.
Garth Knight, thank you for a $5 donation and all your donos tonight, Garth. Very kind of you. It says, fellas, knife to the neck and no financials involved. Would you keep Diggs or Adams? For me, I keep Diggs because Adams seems like he wears makeup.
Yeah, I think I keep Adams.
Yes, I would. I would feel like with Adams, he gives you a pretty good year this year, even though there's these moments where you go, "What are you doing?" You know, like Brendan said earlier on this, Garth. There's times where he's playing a little out of control and not really just. I'm going to go 100 miles an hour and I'll just go somewhere fast and something good will happen. I would like to see a little more control from a guy who's been in this league many years to not play kind of rookie-ish at times. But I do have to think that he has a chance to be better after this year, especially understanding he's coming back from that injury. And he's been told, like he talked about in the presser by his doctors, a sore kneecap this year. It's going to take you that extra year to fully get back your bounce and all of your full juice that you once maybe had or close to what you once had in your leg. So I have hope there where Adams' upside can come into play. With Diggs, he's got one more year remaining on his contract, which means that on top of with Adams, I have to make him a post-June 1st designation. With Diggs, it's one more year, so that means there's a very light amount of bonus money I've got to eat on the dead money of it to release Diggs. And so when I throw that all into the fryer and spin it up and all that, I think Diggs is the one that makes more sense at that point.
Yeah, I could see Adams becoming a big plus player again. I think it's on the table. Diggs, I mean, Diggs is also past his prime in terms of age. He's on the wrong side of 30 now. Maybe the problem is he's just old now. That might be the real problem.
And acknowledging too, he had the injury he did where it's, maybe he's not ever come back to that full point as well. And this is the part that you got to bring into your evaluation. It was the thing I worried about with Diggs is that you're paying for past performance, not what he was necessarily going to bring to the table in the future. And I've been hopeful that he could be better than he's been, but what we're paying him is not necessarily bringing us back the equal returns on that other side of it. And some of this could be just him in single high safety situations all the time, Brendan. But I think some of it too is that we're not getting quite that bang for that buck on that. And but this is all again been driven by Brendan. We're going to have to make a move, right? Somebody major here along this way is going to have to get clipped out. We're going to have a haircut somewhere. So it's a matter of which is the guy that's going to be that guy, or two guys potentially even. And maybe it's Geno and you keep Diggs and Adams. Maybe it's Diggs and Adams and you keep Geno. But there's going to be some guys you're going to make some choices on here that you have to make the choices on. $7 million that just eats up the reserve fund alone. That doesn't cover your salary cap you spend or free agents you want to bring back or any of that. So they're going to have to do something, man. They're going to have to do something. Right. Guard Knight with another $5 donation says, listen, I'm willing to wait as long as it takes for Adams to pay off. Let's check in 12 months from now. Well, I'll say this, Garth. I'm not, if he gives you a middling season next year again after that point, then certainly you're a little close. You're one more. Now he's got one more year remaining on his deal. So then getting out from that deal makes it easier. If you were to cut him after this offseason, you have to make a post-June 1st designation. And that means the dead money is going to be on 2 years at that point. That's a part of the factor that I'm bringing into this at play a little bit too. But I'm fully, if he comes back after this year, comes back next year, you're not married long-term, I would say to him, Garth, but I'd roll with him at least for the time being. He's giving you something on the field, at least something.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And again, Adams is much younger, so it's much more likely that he bounces back than Diggs. Diggs at this point might just be an issue where he's past his prime because he's older now.
It is what it is, right? They'll be 32 years old or something like that. So, there's not a lot of, I think, free safeties at 32 playing in this sport at this point and playing at a high level, I would say, in addition to that. It's just father time catches up in football quick. It does not wait around. It jumps on you, especially your running back, even in your late 20s. It'll clip you up. So, yeah. Just the way it is there, Garth. Just the way it goes. Garth with another donation. Thank you, Garth, for all your donos tonight. I think you have a quad donos spot. He says, don't ever give up on 33 ever. No, I ain't never going to. Never going to, man. Can't do it. Won't do it. Never do it. Teddy G, thank you for a $5 donation as well. Teddy, appreciate you for that. Says, way too soon draft talk. Oh, Teddy.
Not the case.
Not the case with me and Brennan. We were getting started on this in August, man. It's never too soon. Says, what round would you be willing to spend on a quarterback to sit behind Geno?
I don't really look at things like that in that way anymore. I think the answer is you follow your board, you follow value as best you can, and wherever that quarterback is, you do it. Wherever that quarterback is, that you think makes sense for the pick that you have, you do it. If you get to your first round pick, let's say your first round pick is 26 or something, and you really like Quinn Ewers or you really like Michael Penix, and he's there at 26, you do it. But if those guys are not there, then you don't do it. You take something else, and then your third round pick comes around, one of your two third round picks, and if you like Cam Ward and he's there, you do it. If Bo Nix is there and you like him, you do it. I don't think there should be some sort of artificial ceiling on where you spend that pick on the quarterback. It should be when you feel like it's correct.
Agreed. Teddy, I'm kind of right with Brendan on this one. Number one, the success we've had by trusting value in our draft board recently overall in other positions has borne out two of the better drafts we've had in our organization's history. You got to let that be then your guiding light as you go forward. Then I also understand that John Schneider, I think, has a pretty good eye for quarterback talent. Let's look at John Schneider here, and the Matt Flynn contract notwithstanding. He's the guy that drafted Russell Wilson in the third round. They're the guy that rolled with Russell even afterwards and got good play out of him when they trusted him to spend the money on the contract then there for him. He was the guy, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes' pro day, which would lead me to believe in a lot of respects that he had a pretty good healthy fascination with it going to these guys' pro day, knowing it was probably going to cause some blowback with Russell's people, but he wanted to get a look at it. He wanted to get down there. He loved these guys and what he saw on their tape. Looking pretty right on that. Right as well on the Geno Smith contract. And not the contract, but on the trusting Geno and just going, we're going to ride with Geno as the option now that Russ is gone. And people laughed at him. Let's remember, people laughed at him for making that choice. You know, it gets lost a little bit, but they were looked at and scoffed at for doing that, but they were proven right. And what I take from that is that John Schneider may not be this good at all positions. You know, much like Carroll's the cornerback whisperer. I don't know if he develops all positions as well, but there's been enough recent history to me with John in dealing with the quarterback position to believe that whoever he targets, like Brendan says, will be the right guy for this team. And if that's a first round guy that he's got to package multiple first round picks to go get, which John has never done, I'll support him on it because I support the fact that I've seen enough of him in his lay line there, where I'm going to go and find the right guy. I have a good eye for quarterback talent. You feel like that too with him?
Yeah, I would say so. Although, wasn't he also hot to trot on Baker Mayfield?
Man, I don't know about that. I don't know. He wasn't at the pro day for Baker Mayfield. I'll say that. No, the thing with that, Brendan, I thought with that was this. What he was doing, they were negotiating with Russell's people at the time. Russell's people were asking for a percentage of the cap. So he did that was Cleveland at their worst thing. And he sort of called Cleveland like, hey, what would you think about Russ for the number one overall pick? And I think that was, by the way, a draft that wasn't that the draft. You had a couple of guys out. I don't know. But I think what he was doing was then he could come back to Russ's people and be like, hey, you want us to ship you to Cleveland? You don't start to come down to a realistic place here. Because remember, Russ at that time didn't have a no trade clause.
Right.
That was what drove the whole no trade clause after that fact, was that whole Cleveland Brown thing that they told him about. So I don't think it was that they were intending to draft him, but I think it was that they were trying to scare Russ into getting a contract signed, and it might have worked. Russ signed a contract after those potential rumors were kind of out there. So, you know what I mean?
I mean, that being said, if we spend our first round pick on Quinn Ewers, I think you're going to be hesitant on that. You're going to, you're not going to just say, in John we trust, right? You're going to say, hey, it's great that John really likes this guy, but I personally don't see it, right?
Yes, but I would have more of there's times where I'll say this sucks and this is going to suck. Like when Jordan Brooks was drafted and I said, I don't like this pick for reasons A, B, and C, and D. There's no benefit of the doubt on this pick. I don't like this pick. This Eskridge pick happens. I don't like this pick. There's notwithstanding. Here's the reasons why. With that kind of thing, I could say you're right. Okay, I'm not big on this in Ewers situation, but at the same point in time, that trust of John will factor into where at the end of the day, I'm going to trust in his decision-making, because I'm not the grand poobah on any of these guys. You know, like there's things that I'll have hard opinions on, but there's other ones where I'm like, well, I maybe just, quarterback position is one of the hardest to evaluate, Brendan. It's the maybe hardest to evaluate out there that exists. So I will have a little bit more benefit of the doubt on that one than I would on other picks that we've made. LJ Collier. There's not going to be any like, well, I'll trust in their ability to draft edges. So even though I hate this pick, I think it'll eventually will work out. No, I wouldn't do that. But this one, I'll give him a little bit more room on, because I think that he does have that eye for this, like Carroll does with cornerbacks. I'll give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt on it. But yes, I will still be bitching and moaning about Quinn Ewers if they make that It does look like he's going back to Texas, though, as
Really?
Manning is going to transfer. So your Manning's going to maybe go to University of Washington, man.
Ooh, wow. Wow, 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 wow. I gotta
You're gonna.
I gotta go. I gotta stand up. I gotta stand up so I can sit down after hearing that one. Okay, I gotta stand up. Now I'm sitting back down.
You know, Washington's on the phone. Like, oh, you want to run an offense, Arch? You want to run an offense that's going to cook and put you on? Like, we lose Michael. We don't have an answer here. Come on up.
Oh man. Oh man, that would be fun.
That would be fun. But
Yeah.
supposedly he is going to enter the transfer portal because rumors are that yours is going to be coming back.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I do like the this super chat though. At the end, it says to sit behind Geno because I do think that's by far the most likely outcome here. I think some people are thinking we're going to draft a rookie, cut Geno, and then the rookie starts day one. The rookies that we can get, probably not day one starters.
It's the place I've been trying to draw for the people that the anti-Geno folks into getting us to a common ground to where we can all kind of kumbaya this thing and to say to them that, okay, we have different camps that stand in here, the pro Genos, the anti-Genos, I'm middle of the ground on Geno, I'm wishy-washy. We can all come together on one thing. We're going to draft a quarterback. And if we're going to go draft the quarterback, then at that point in time, he comes in to compete with Geno, and it's not either this or that, it's both things. And then we all get what we want. The draftable people that want the next guy to be drafted, they're going to get what they want. And the folks that that are pro Geno, that, hey, let's let Geno ride out and see what he can still do now as the team gets better and better. They get what they want. And we have a potential plan for the future at the position. So it's the place I've tried to get to with it, Brendan. But that's been the part that I don't think people have put together as much together on, is this will be a both thing, not an either or. You're not going to ride with just the rookie and be like, here's the job, Rook. You see what you can do. You're going to want that veteran presence. There's a possibility they could go the Drew Lock rookie quarterback if they determine that the price is much.
Yeah, that is more likely, but you know that Pete wants the guy that he feels like is the best at that point in time. He's not the kind of guy who's like, I'll sacrifice this season for the greater good.
No, I don't think he would be as well. He's going to want to go with the best. And, let's get no, he's not going to waste a season on just letting the guy develop. He's got to be better than Geno. But I like that about it, Brendan, because competition, as we've seen across the board, is the best thing for the team, even at the quarterback position. Having Russell and Flynn and Tavares Jackson fighting it out bore you out, Russ, to play the position.
Right.
Thank you, Teddy, for the donation. Teddy coming in with another donation. Thank you for the $2 dono. Says, do you think John outlasts Pete Carroll as a head coach?
I think they leave at the same time. I think they're pretty well connected, which is kind of interesting that I say that because they clearly disagree so much. But I don't know. I feel like both guys go when the new owner comes in and decides I want my own guy.
Yeah, Teddy, some of this is just drawn by the human nature of new owners wanting their new guys. And I've said that my theory on this is that new owners want to come in, even if they have good guys in place, to put in new guys because they want credit for hiring those guys. Because then when you win a Super Bowl, you can say, hey, I was at the start of what made this happen down the line. So I do think that John probably lasts here as long as Pete does. There's a lot of talk, Teddy, of Pete retiring. I don't think that that's coming down anytime soon. I don't think that he's indicated that he wants to retire anytime soon. So in the case of both Pete and John, Teddy, I think that they're both going to be here for years into the future. I don't think that there's a sale coming down anytime soon. And especially having another successful year as they're going to have this year, there's not going to be any hot seat under either of those two gentlemen. So they'll be here both for the foreseeable future, I would say. And they, like with Bennett, they both probably go at the same time. Slight chance John outlasts him just simply because he's so much younger, but new owner's going to want new toys.
Yeah. How long did it take Jerry Jones to fire Tom Landry?
About 5.5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, at the time, he was one of the greatest legends in NFL history ever. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Tom Landry was the guy who invented the shotgun offense.
That's right. Yeah.
And he was like, nope, out of here. Get out of here.
Yeah. It's a weird thing, man. That's the thing that but the thing about Teddy too, is if you got a billionaire that buys the team and it's somebody else who hired those guys and they go get the job done, can you really take credit for it? Like, well, I bought the team, but I didn't do anything. I didn't have any effect on it. And that's, I think there's a big draw to that.
Which is why I kind of can't believe Ron Rivera survived the Commanders selling.
Yeah, well, I think that's just a matter of time on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's supposedly right now, one of those rumors that's the open rumor secret out there that's starting to emerge the past couple of days, that there is already the team in place that Coach Belichick is going to go to and he's going to be both the head coach and the general manager for the team that he's going to go to.
Why would you ever want Bill Belichick, the GM, man? Why would you ever want that?
Because you can't get the head coach without him getting that control as well.
I mean, I'd rather just not have him. I mean, like, he's such a bad GM. Like it's been, I feel like most of his general manager decisions have been a disaster.
It is, but it's also going to probably go to an organization that's a not get right organization that's been in the dumpster for years on end. So their understanding about what is successful and what is a guy that's going to bring something to the table to generate some excitement within our fan base and galvanize some things. Take, for instance, Washington, who hasn't had a good coach come through there since Joe Gibbs back in the day, and they haven't had any success in recent years. I don't know that type of team looks at it in that same way. I think the way you present it is accurate. I wouldn't want to bring him in as my general manager either. But it does start to come down to, like, what's the other alternative options here if you're not? We talked about this when people talk to us about who's the next coach for Coach Carroll. There's not a lot of hot commodities out there to be had. If you're looking for an improvement beyond Ron Rivera, Brendan, who is it? Who is the guy that's a better coach than what he is right there now? Because I think they're driven to want to move off of him for the reasons we just gave. New ownership, new change. Who's a coach out there that you would bring out instead of Ron Rivera?
I mean, you could try to go the Lincoln Riley route, right? You could try to just
I don't
wow
think
everybody.
Yeah, but he's not a wow hire at this point. His star is as diminished as it's been in the last 5 years as far as a head coaching job. He's not looking at they're not looking at him like he's doing a great job at USC. He's got the same record basically as his predecessor at USC. And that's with Caleb Williams.
I mean, Harbaugh's about to peel on out of Michigan, isn't he? That would be the other big swing you could take. That
is another big swing you could take. But you could make the argument, Belichick and Harbaugh, you could have them kind of in the same level of if it's, down to one to the other, then, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. I think there will be a team that gives him that chance because they like what they're getting as the coach, and they trust in that so much that they'll overlook the fact that he's had diminishing returns as a general manager in the last 10 years.
Right.
Thank you, Teddy, for your double donations. I appreciate you for that. Addis the Gamer, thank you for the $2 donation as well. Says, hopefully this team can get their revenge. Beat LA. Well, it's maybe one of the one positive places for me, Addis, on this, that you lost that first game, is this team will be up for this game. They're not going to overlook this LA team. They got embarrassed. I'm sure they're watching that tape all throughout this week. I think that'll have you have them on their P's and Q's here.
Yeah. We'll have a lot more to say about that on Thursday night, but I feel all right about this one, and maybe I shouldn't, but I do.
I do as well, Addis. I think we're going to be on at this game. I think we're going to want to try to put our best effort out there, and I think we'll be enough to clip LA. I do. Let's get them. Oh, I missed another here. We got a lot of donos tonight. Thank you guys for all the donations in the chat. You guys are unbelievable in your support. Mega Lucario with the $2 donation says, how do you feel about Jared Verse if he falls to us?
I don't think he's going to.
I don't think he's going to fall to us either on this Mega. If he does fall to us, would you take him? Is that, if you've got Cooper Bebe, if you've got Cooper Bebe, Graham Barton, Jared Verse, and Tavondre Sweat available for you at the end of the first round, which one are you grabbing, Brendan?
If we're going BPA, I got to go Verse. I think he's the best player of that group. It's tough, though. I mean, he's not really playing that well this year. I will say that. He's not had the monster year people anticipated.
Yeah, and that does worry me. I get worried on these kind of pass rushers have that good year and then come back the next year and it's not quite as good. Certainly, he's getting a little bit more attention in double teams this year than he got last year. But when it comes down to if it's available between getting a guy like Cooper Bebe and Jared Verse, especially considering the assets that we have bore into the edge position, what we're paying Uchenna Nwosu, the 2 second-round picks in recent years, I think that there's a little bit of a drive to kind of overload that position when we don't have to, and that you're better to build another position out better. We're better with Cooper Bebe as our starting left guard than we are as Jared Verse as our fourth edge coming off the bench. That would be my opinion on it.
You're probably right. Get back to me after the combine. I want to see how Verse tests.
I do like Verse, Mega, but some of it's informed to me on this that as much as I like him, I think it's just you can end up having too many. You can go get a fourth edge that's really functional and give you some pass rush and can give you some play without having to invest that into a first round guy. On top of the fact, we have to acknowledge these edge rushers don't often give you a lot of production right out the gate. You tend to have to wait for it a little bit. So it's like, we're going to be in go for it mode next year. We got to get guys to me that are ready to hit the ground and give us maximum impact, especially the higher drafted guys who are going to have the most potential. Radu Turkan, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, what do you think if we trade for Fields for cheap? I think I very much think Fields could succeed in our system. Maybe use your first to even help defense. Defense?
Fields is bad.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about this. I understand that there's some stuff going on in Chicago that isn't his fault, but Fields is bad at quarterback. He's a bad quarterback, and I don't think much can save him at this point.
Yeah, it's also a bit more complicated than making the trade for him, in my opinion, a bit, because there's a bit of a cap hit that he's going to carry with him, bringing him over just a tiny bit. When you make a trade for this guy, Radu, to me, the problem comes into play is that I don't know if I'm as hard-lined as Brendan is to say that he's bad, but that you don't really have an assessment that you can make of him at this point because of how bad Chicago has mucked it up. So I don't really want to make a trade for a guy unless I know he's an improvement or a helping hand, especially a guy that's going to carry a little bit of contract. And it's unfortunate that Chicago's done him that way a little bit, but he might also be a bad player and Chicago might have done him wrong. And I don't want to be the team to have to figure out what the truth of that is. Let some other team go out there and figure it out. Big thing with this too, for me, Radu, is my assessment of Fields coming into the NFL. And I didn't like Fields coming out of Ohio State. I felt like he was an overrated quarterback. I didn't like the fact that we heard words like last in the building, first out. My quarterback has to work. He has to put the time and the effort in. And part of me wondering in his development, his lack of development, has it been both maybe how Chicago has dealt with you and also maybe your lack of work ethic to improve your game, to get better? How does that factor in as well here? And it all comes down to the bottom line for me of we can do better and going in a different place, especially in this draft, Radu, that has so many guys in the second and the third round that you can target who can give you kind of, I think, similar, at the very least, a similar skill set to what you get from Justin Fields.
I bottom line is I don't want to do it. I'm pretty out on Fields personally. I don't really like anything I see there.
Maybe use your first to even help defense. And I'm a value guy, like me and Brendan have talked about, Radu, on this one. For you guys in the chat, I think you guys are going to get maybe a little bit wore out with me and Brendan in our response on this, because we'll have people ask us creative ways to ask these questions, but you're going to find that we are housed in a thought process here that is, we're stuck on this. We're not moving into the range of stretching for this guy in the draft or targeting this position in this particular place in the draft. I can't undersell this enough to you folks. That's the wrong pathway to go. It's the wrong pathway to go to say we have to get this position, so we target it here in the draft. That is what caused your drafts to fail from 2015 almost all the way up to 2020. John Schneider himself has said over a half a dozen times over the last year that very thing. The thing I just said, he said, here's the truth of the situation. We got stuck into need. We got stuck into driving to fit to fill positions. It didn't work. It failed on us. It broke. Past true drafts, we've had now a value-based draft. Who's the most valuable guy on the board? And what that's led you to do at times is you take Derek Hall when you already have Uchenna Nwosu and Boye Mafe and Darrell Taylor. It causes you to take Jackson Smith-Njigba when you already have Tyler Lockett and Derek Young had a good year last year and DK Metcalf. This is what happens when you go by a value-based term, but you have to choose a way on this. You can't do it sort of half one way and half another way. Like, oh, the first round pick will make need, but then the second round pick will make value, but then the third round pick will make need. It doesn't work. It's not the way. You got to choose the lane you want to go. Is it need or is it value? You got to make your pick. And so Radu, with me and Brendan, this is going to be something that's very important for the folks that follow our channels as we go into the future of this draft and this upcoming season. Recent history has told us, go value. And if you go value, you can't go and then say, target this here and target that there. That's the opposite of that approach. It's a broken approach. That's the most important part.
Yeah. I mean, I remember streaming this most recent draft, as we both did on draft day. And when we took Witherspoon, a lot of people didn't like it, right? A lot of people freaked out about it. And I remember after that pick, I said, this is part of what happens when you're trying to do BPA. Sometimes you take a player at a position you already have another good player at. And then people in the chat were like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. Let's go draft for need. Let's draft for need. Let's draft for need. These same people who for years hated all of our drafts because we drafted for need. And, what I basically said was, if you're going to draft for BPA, you have to be willing to live with its results. Sometimes it doesn't go exactly the way you want it to, but you're never really going to be that disappointed if you draft BPA as long as your board is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are players we could have drafted at 20 that are a little better than JSN, I think. There are. As of right now, I can probably find a few players who are doing more to help their teams win games than JSN is helping our team to win. But JSN is still good, right? JSN is still helping.
Mm-hmm.
Same for somebody like Charbonnet. Yeah, there are probably a couple guys we could have drafted instead of Charbonnet, but Charbonnet is really good. It's a great way to make sure you're never upset. You're just, sometimes you don't get exactly what you want.
Right. But the key point on it is that it's recent history has taught us to go this direction, that this is the smart approach, that this is the right approach. And that's why we're so hardlined on this, Radu, with sticking in this land of things of, no, take the value on your board. Because you're right. There might have been more valuable players than JSN after this point, and how they play might have been better. But I trust that the Seahawks had JSN as the number one guy on their board. I trust that Witherspoon was the highest guy that they had rated on their board when they picked. That Derek Hall was the highest guy they had on their board when they pick. And in that trust, I think we're going to bear out the best team, and a team that truly can be a contender, where those teams in 2015 to 2020 were not contenders. They were very good teams, but they weren't contenders. And again, with this too, Radu, on this is right from John Schneider's lips, is he's given about 6-7 interviews over the past year. And every interview, the same question comes out. This last draft, how did you have so much success? These last 2 drafts, how did you kill it so well? How did you do so good? What have you done, John? What's the secret sauce? And every time he's been consistent in saying it's that we went to value and we went away from need. We got ourselves stuck in hell with need. We got to get ourselves to the promised land by going to value. And I'm going to be in this land, Radu. Brand's going to be in this land, and I promise you it's going to bring out the best results for our draft into the future if we can stay in this mode. It'll be the best team that you get at the end of the day from it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Appreciate you, Radu. Thank you for that. Dono, man. And good to see you in the chat too as well. Garth with another $5. Thank you, Garth, for all your donos tonight. Says, to be honest, what I miss most about Russ being gone is his agent and the stories. Mark Rogers is an absolute beauty. He's the Sierra of agents.
Mm-hmm.
Never heard him accused of that before. I've heard Rogers accused of many things, but never the Sierra of agents, Garth. That's a new one for me on that one.
We know he's a baseball agent. Which baseball players does he represent, though?
It's a couple. He's got a few under his belt. So quite a couple, but he's tried to apply all the baseball principles to football, and it just doesn't work when you have an actual salary cap. It makes it a little bit. Though, hey, you got to give Mark props, Brendan. I mean, he's got his guy contracts over and over and over again at the top high water mark. He's done his job by his player, no doubt about that.
I have a feeling that after this Russ debacle is over in Denver, there are a couple of front offices that are just going to refuse to interact with him. They're going to just be like, I hear your voice on the call, I'm hanging up.
Yeah, he's definitely not going to have a lot of extra clients after this point. I think Russ is going to be a one-off for him in the NFL. There's probably been a reason he hasn't been able to recruit other players. It's worked for Russ. It's worked for that situation. Works when you're a star quarterback. I don't know if it's going to the approach work as well if you're in other positions in other places.
Yeah, imagine if he was trying to represent running backs right now. People would he'd get laughed out of the room.
He would. He'd be hitting him up 1 year after 1 year of production. Like, okay, we know these guys are going out quick, so you got to pay him now.
Yeah. Imagine him trying to represent Saquon after the year he's having right now for the Giants when he hits the market.
Never get a deal done, probably. You're like, it's coming eventually, Saquon. Just you got to trust the process. It'll come. They'll want you eventually on this. Yeah, it wouldn't be good. Garth with another dono. Garth, thank you for all your donos tonight, man. You're unbelievable today. Says, okay, fellas, but you're always unbelievable in that respect. Okay, fellas, life on the line, and you got to ride with the Rams or the Hawks, knowing Jamal Adams is involved in the game-deciding play. Who do you pick to win?
Okay, so if it is the game-winning deciding play, it's probably a passing play because it's very rare you see a running play decide the game, right? Mm-hmm. That's just how the NFL works. So Adams is probably in coverage, where Adams has been excellent so far this year. So I'm going to say I would feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, I would feel the same way, Garth. If we're talking about his first season, when he got by this point in the time of the year, he's already getting beat up in 2020 and starting to kind of be reduced down as a player, it might be a different answer. But we even have evidence of this in the recent Cleveland Browns game. The game deciding play there on defense. Jamal comes on the blitz, jumps up in the air, puts a header off his head, causes the interception. You get the game winning play at that point in time. So, he's already been in this moment and he's been able to produce for us with that. And I'm hard on Jamal and what I've seen from him so far. But I will acknowledge, like Brennan said, he's played pretty good football overall. There's been some moments that have been like, oh, that does not look right. But overall, he is playing hard. He is going 100 miles an hour. But yeah, I would trust my life on the line, Garth. I'd trust in Jamal making the play at that point, as he did this year.
Yeah. And I want to say, I think the bad tackling is league-wide. It's not just this team that is not tackling well. And honestly, our bad tackling has been kind of isolated to the last 2 weeks, right? Before the Ravens game, our tackling was the envy of most of the league.
Yeah, it had been pretty solid. It's been just last couple of weeks, and I think there's been some big moments too where guys just sliding off purely. I was joking. It's like Vaseline's coated on the jersey at times the last few weeks, but hopefully they can clean it up. I think the good news is a lot of these places you can see where they can clean up by just telling him to wrap up and not just stick your shoulder in there, Jordan or Jamal. Get the hands wrapped around the body to bring him down. It does help the tackling process when you are able to do that. So that's where we go. Hopefully that's the way it plays out, Garth. I wouldn't mind seeing it, especially to come away with the dub in this game, which is going to be so very important with the stack of 4 games set up on the horizon that we are going to have to play. John Stillwell has been a member of the Hawks Nest for 8 long months. Thank you for that, John. I do appreciate you for that. Says, how is it going, guys? Well, we're doing good. We feel good about this recent win, John, and where the team's going overall and this upcoming matchup.
I'm excited to see where we are after these next several games. And it might not be anywhere good, but I'm still kind of excited to see it. And cynically, I have to point out here, I've been making some videos about this. The NFC might already just have their playoff teams because all the other NFC teams are falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
Like I thought Atlanta was going to be there. No, they're not happening. Like I thought that maybe Tampa, but Tampa's probably about to get their butt kicked this week, and then they'll probably be out of it too. The Rams have faded pretty quickly here. The Packers are fading out. It's like I almost feel like we could punch in our 7 NFC playoff teams right now and feel pretty good about it.
I do as well. And I'm encouraged by this season where it's been 6-3, and the table is set up for them to do and control their own fate here, Brendan. Like you say, it's all to make the playoffs, to win the division, to be in contention for a bye, to be a contender. They're not there on all these things quite yet. We're in there as far as a playoff team, but getting these other spots, there's room for it to get there. You can see the team developing to that stage. Your health is in pretty good stage. You've got some omens at times, like the Bills, for instance, with those 3 major defensive injuries. You could kind of see that the Bill fall a little bit with those defense, like, ooh, that's 1 too many with those kind of guys you lost, where that drop, and you feel a little bit dark as a Bills fan going through those next couple of collections of games about where you think it might be going. Us on the other side of it, Uchenna being the only guy you've really lost for the season here on both sides of the ball, with guys coming back instead of McIntosh or Lucas, it does get you into a position of feeling like, okay, we're going to be able to play our best ball at the end of the season, and we haven't played the worst of ball already so far yet. So it's where it's got us encouraged 100%, John. Encouraged and feeling good. And John's coming in with $100 donation on the other side of it, man. Jesus, thank you so much, John. Very, very kind of you. He says, you guys look game ready right now. Well, I am. I could play the Rams right now, Brennan. I'm looking forward to this game. We got embarrassed in the opening week. I'm really excited to see where this team's going to go this year. I don't know where this ride's going to lead. For a 6-3 team, you usually, I think, would have a little bit more certainty about what your team was and who they were going to be. And, you just kind of would, but with this one in both ways and where they could end up, I'm unsure. And I'm excited, but unsure.
Yeah, I made a video earlier today about how this fan base, to me, from my perspective, as somebody who's kind of plugged in because I, do what I do, and I know you are too on about the same level. You interact with hundreds of different Seahawks fans pretty constantly. It doesn't feel like this fan base is as excited as an average fan base for a 6-3 team should. And look, if you manage a couple of wins over the next month, people are gonna get pulled in a little bit. I think, like, they're for some reason they're not pulled in yet. I mean, this team is good, right? They're 6-3. They're in the playoffs. They have 2 wins against really good teams in Detroit and Cleveland. There are some things going on here. They have a ton of young talent. I would say that we have more young talent than any other team in the league. Like, our last two draft classes collectively are probably better than any other team's 2 last draft classes collectively. But there's just something not quite there yet. I feel like it's not pulling people in. But you win a game against the Niners, you win a game against the Cowboys, that's going to do it.
Absolutely will. And I don't know that they need to go through this and dominate these 4 matchups or go even 2-2 to get to that state. If you can pull out one of the wins in the 3, I mean, I'd love to pull 2 out. I would. I'd love to pull 3. If they can do that, that will absolutely get people into that state of things. I'm feeling the same thing on my end here, which is, me and Brendan's excitement for this team. And we've had our parts that we've been down on the team, but overall excited because the overall perspective of it has to be considered beyond the micro, beyond the Geno decision or the Jamal choice, or whether the defense is being this, or whether there's things that we want to see for improvement here, John. The overall steps you're taking are forward-taking steps, and you are 6-3 with a roster that was the 3rd youngest roster coming into the NFL season this year. I mean, that is in itself, to just say that part out loud, 3rd youngest roster in the NFL, and yet you find yourself at 6-3. And there is that part of the fan base, though, that just, I don't know what it is really for sure, Brendan. I've got some theories on this. You have a coach in place for 12 years and people just get excited by the new, potentially shiny, coach object thing out there that could exist, and all of the potential with that, forgetting what you might lose by moving off that coach. But I do hope that they do go into that place, because they've done so much good here, John, for this team to be where it is right now. And the fan base should reward them for that, because a lot of these choices could have gone wrong or could have been made poorly, or they could have stuck in that need-based approach to their draft over the past couple of years, rather than making these real pure changes that are part of why they've been able to turn this team into the way that they've been turned. But
yeah, there are valid reasons to want this regime to end in Seattle, but the fact that this 2023 Seahawks team is not a Super Bowl contender is not one of them. Like, that's not, like, again, I don't want this regime to become a victim of their own success. And I'll give a little bit of an example of that. Do you remember Avery Johnson, the guy who was the
point
coach
guard
for the Dallas Mavericks?
Mm-hmm.
He was the coach of the Mavericks for 3 seasons. The first year he was there, they went to the finals and lost. The second year he was there, they were the number 1 seed, 67 wins, one of the best seasons in NBA history, and then they lose in the first round. And that was the We Believe Warriors season. And then the next year, they have a bunch of injuries. They win 50-plus games still. They make the playoffs. They lose. And then Avery Johnson gets fired. So that's a coach who has made the finals in a 3-year span. He's made the playoffs every year. He's made the finals. He had the best season in franchise history. And then he gets fired after a season where they still win 50 games and make the playoffs. And it was like, oh, that was because it felt like they fell so far from where they were. But in reality, that's a coach who's still doing a pretty good job, isn't it? Like, 50 wins in the West that year was no joke, but he got fired, and it kind of felt like he was a victim of his own success, because they were like, well, yeah, you won 50 games, but last year you won 67, so get out of here. You're getting worse. But in reality, maybe he was just ahead of where he should have been those first 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point on your part. And I worry about it a little bit, absent the fact I just don't think, with all the squawking some folks do within regards to Coach Carroll or Schneider, that it will have any effect. Because as we've talked about, there's no change that's coming down until ownership comes, a new ownership change comes. And there's not likely to be a new ownership change anytime soon. But I think you bring up a right thing, where people got spoiled last year. You started 6 rookies. You went out there and made the playoffs. So it's like, okay, now it's got to be a step forward this year, and intangibly, where you go out there and you win a couple playoff games, or you get to the conference championship, and anything short of that. And it's just those raise expectations. I like it in one respect for my Hawks fans, Brendan, because there are those fan bases out there that are, have more of the loser mentality of like, we're just happy to be in the playoffs, but with our team, we want to be great. But the fan bases, I like that part of even though I don't necessarily like that they're so jumping at the bit to like move on and go, I do like that they're driven to say, hey, we expect to win here. That's the standard in place. We want to win, and not just win and win more games than we lose, not just be a 54% Mariner team, but be a team that goes out there and can contend and be truly one of the elite teams in the NFL year after year after year. And it has been 10 years since you've been in that state. That is the reality of it. It has been 10 years since you've been truly an elite team. So I do get a little bit of sympathy from them on that. But I just think that's that place where it gets a little bit too overcolored, and you forget about all the good that's happening here as well with this team, all the pluses and things that they have done that have been right on the right side of choices and decisions.
Yeah, the way I put it in a video I made earlier today was, if you're going to give Pete and John a second chance, which we did, we could have fired them after 2021 when that season ended in failure. If you're going to give them another chance, you have to actually give them another chance.
Yeah.
You can't give them half a chance and go like, okay, now you're gone.
Yeah.
If you were going to do that, you should have just fired them then.
Agreed.
But you gave them another chance. You have to let that chance play out.
Yeah. You've got to find that separation from 2020 and cut away, as hard as it might be and as frustrating as it might be, to say, look, you got to ignore a little bit of the prior to 2020 stuff, because there are these big sweeping changes, how we draft, how we run our schemes, offense and defense. We're changing that while still bringing along the good that we do. And that change, you got to give that change some time to bake out. Great point on your part, and 100% agree with you, man. Oh, luckily, they're going to be given that time. That's a good part, is that even though I know that we have a good contingent of the fan base that might bark, there's not going to be any bite on this one, as those guys are going to remain here. And I'm glad they are, because they're doing some great stuff. But you better be ready. We're ready for the game. I'm ready to go kick this Rams ass. I'm ready to go show them what happened after week one. I'm ready to show them, oh, you want to embarrass us week one? Get ready for us to give it to you now. We're in the thick of this, rebuild Rams. We're in the thick of this. You're not. Get out of here.
Yeah, you know the Rams already got one foot in Cabo.
They do. They're making the vacation plans. They're like, they're going to do a European tour. You know what I mean? Like, they're all in that head already. So we just got to take advantage of that, John. And let's come back and give it to them. How about we give it to them for once? How about Carroll, instead of McVay with all that embarrassment he's put on him, he embarrasses him for once. Especially with all of us Hawk fans taking over the LA stadium like, we're going to as well. Oh, John, you know what happens? There'll be way more blue out there than there'll be yellow probably in that stadium on game day this upcoming week. It'd be great if it starts sounding loud when they're on offense too. That'd be awesome. But John, thank you, man, for your $100 donation. One of our big time, long time supporters. You, Garth, all the rest in there. All you do for the channel and your support on both me and Brendan's side, man. I really, really, really do appreciate it. Hope you're having a good night, John. It's good to see you. Mega Lucario, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, looking back now after all the Geno controversy, if AR-15 was on the board at 5, do you take him or stick with Spoon?
To me, the only hindsight discussion that is even worth having with that number 5 pick is, should you have traded up for CJ Stroud? Because Stroud's been phenomenal in a not ideal situation either. That Houston team is not exactly built for a quarterback to be great. And he's been great. I think we can both agree CJ Stroud's been great.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the only thing you can even coherently discuss, like saying, if we could have done that, would that be better than what we did?
Yeah.
So AR-15, no, not at all.
Yeah, I think definitely would have been great to trade up. I don't think Houston would have traded up. I think they wanted Stroud at that point when he fell to him. I would be a little different than you on this, where if if Anthony Richardson fell to me at 5, knowing how high the team was on him, you're bringing him to a different environment than the way the Colts were bringing him into. The Colts did not have things set up for him for success. I'm not the least bit surprised AR-15 got injured and got injured pretty quick, because they wanted to use him like a running back at the position and get him beat up, and they weren't caring about his development there. But I would have taken him at 5 to have that opportunity to take a guy like Richardson. I trust the long-term development of that kid. I love Spoon, but to have a chance to get a franchise quarterback is one we're not going to have maybe an opportunity to do anytime soon. And it would be too much to not go for that at that point for me, just on my perspective on it.
I mean, if I liked AR-15 more, I would, of course, at least consider this. But I was I didn't know what to think of him. I understand there's great potential, but it is a very, very, like when knowing what we know now about Witherspoon, there's no way I'm taking him off to get AR-15 instead. Just not happening. Because AR-15 didn't prove anything this year. I know he got hurt, and it's not his fault he got hurt. But it's not like he went out there and proved, oh, I'm actually a really good quarterback. He proved that he's a good athlete, which we already knew, and that's about it.
Yeah, I don't think he proved necessarily anything by the little bit of time he went out there and played. I don't. I mean, you're right. There's a lot of question with him on you not having the certainty of a guy like Stroud who played 2 full seasons of high-level football and you knew what you were getting. There's a lot of projection. Some of this is just me going off, Brendan, what we were hearing about reportedly of how interested our coaching staff was in Anthony Richardson, how high they were in him if he was to fall him. And all indications were that if he were to fall in him, they would have jumped on him, that they were high enough on him to then take him at that point. But I'm good either way on this one. Mega. You go Spoon or you can go with AR, and I'd be good on either one. But I would be probably driven a little bit more on this one to grabbing him there.
Would you rather have things go the way they did, or would you rather have traded number 5 and number 20 to trade up to get Stroud?
I would have gone for Stroud.
And I think I would have too.
And I mean, I don't know if you remember, it is my ending, and it was an evaluation. This is the way that these evaluations work, is you go through the whole process of, you don't do where you start. Like we have some of the guys we start at, it's where you end out at. Remember at the end, I said, my comp firm is Joe Montana. I'm on record as saying that at the end when we were having our discussions on him, and saying that my comp for Stroud is Montana. And that, like Montana, who wasn't the most upper level gifted guy, but if you put some supporting stuff around him that can work, he could go out there and look like one of the best all-time quarterbacks ever. I thought Stroud could be in that kind of way. So yeah, I definitely was. He was the guy that was my number 1 QB on my board by far. I thought he was way over both of these two guys, be it AR-15 or Bryce Young, and I would have made that move 100% to do that.
Yeah, and I believe that if we had done that, our situation would be much better than the Houston situation where he is excelling. Like I don't see Houston having some great offensive line. I don't see them having amazing receivers or an amazing offensive coordinator. He's just kind of making it work without having a great situation. This may be, I don't want to go too far with it. This may end up being the greatest rookie quarterback season ever. If you look at his numbers, you look at what he's doing it with, like, I think this is better than Dan Marino, Matt Ryan, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. Like I'm very impressed. Like, I liked him before, but now this guy's going places.
Yeah, I agree. It's that he's getting it done without having everything working in his favor there on that offense, a defensive-minded head coach. And he's out there balling, man. I mean, he's out there getting it done. And he doesn't even have a good ground game to necessarily operate off of. Pierce has been okay. It's really is on his arm and slinging the rock all over the football field to make it happen. He's been awesome. So I'd make that trade all day with that. Even if JSN was at like 600 yards right now in the season and Witherspoon was as good as he was, I'd still make that trade to go make that move. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5 donation, and appreciate you guys. All you guys on these don't knows says, all right, you guys are unshakable, but answer this. Who is more likely to wear makeup between Diggs and Adams? Also, who do you want backing you up in a scrape?
Well, the makeup thing, I mean, I got nothing to say about that one. I'm going to sit that one out. But you got to have Adams backing you in a scrape, right? He's got 30 pounds on Diggs?
And a couple inches too. I mean, Diggs is he's a good 5'8.5", I would say, probably, versus Adams, who I think is a little closer to getting right near 6 feet tall. So I got to go. I mean, in boxing and UFC, weight divisions and all that makes a difference. So having a guy a little heavier is not a lot of times. I'm going to look for the 5'8" guy to come with me down the dark alley. I'm just going to say that, Garth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's unless it's like Kiefer Sutherland or something. I think he's like 5'2". He's like 5'2" or something, I think.
He is a little guy, which is weird because his dad was actually kind of tall. So a little bit strange there on that one.
Yeah, that's it's so hard for them to film those fight scenes in 24. Like the stuff they had to do.
Oh yeah, a lot of tight close-ups, a lot of right here, so you can't see how the size difference. He made it work though. Back in the day, that was the first season that was awesome. It didn't hold. They kind of got repetitive after a while, but
yeah. Well, my parents tried to rewatch it a couple years ago, and they were like, "This does not hold up. This sucks now," and they loved it at the time.
It was a completely in the moment kind of thing. It was like at the height of all the, 9/11 stuff, and everybody was all that, the fears you could kind of prey upon by making that show had everybody kind of, in on it with it. And then the whole unique, everything happening within the 24 hours, everything happening real time, kind of whole trope part of it was so new.
And no one ever goes to the bathroom, even though it's supposed to be in real time.
That's right. That's right. The driving is very fast. They somehow get across town in 5 minutes for what would take hours and hours. And they're just suddenly to the other side of town, stuff like that would go down too. And you're like, okay, guys, we're playing very loose with the real time here, aren't we? Very loose.
Yeah.
As far as makeup, I'll go Adams more likely. Most likely got to wear the makeup and maybe paint his nails. I'm not saying, just saying.
Yeah.
But thank you, Garth, for all your donos, brother.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's completely cool. I get it. Mega Lucario, thank you for multiple donos today as well from you, man. I really do appreciate all your donations today, and yourself is included in that. It says Bruce Irvin signed with the Lions. Happy for him. Wow.
I saw that.
It's a great pickup by the Detroit Lions, and maybe it will be very interesting to track this as we go through the future of the season. Is you could have had both Frank or Bruce, like Brendan said earlier. I do believe Bruce gave you a lot more impact when he came aboard than what you've been able to get from Frank Clark, both in his ability to defend the run and play against the pass. He wore down as the year went along because you had to play him too many snaps. But I thought Bruce has been far beyond what we've gotten from Frank so far. So we'll see what he can maybe bring to the Lions versus what Frank's bringing here.
Yeah. I know he's starting on their practice squad, so it'll probably be a little while before he gets on the field. But there's some desire in him to continue to play.
I like it. Cool. And a contender at that. He's going to come out and play for a team that can maybe go out there in the playoffs and do some things for him. So I love it, man. I love it for Bruce. Good job for Bruce. Good deal for Bruce. Thank you, though, Mega. Appreciate you on that donation. John coming in with another $50 donation. John Stillwell, thank you so very, very much for all the donations. You are very kind, brother, and all your support. John, you got to text me too or email me too on an address for your wife on that shirt I'm going to have made. So I can use your business address you've sent me email wise, but I got to get you set up too for making sure I'm sending that shirt to the right place. It says, where is the fan base on the idea of splitting the carries a little more evenly?
Well, when I made the video earlier today about Charbonnet being really, really efficient and effective, and Walker not really getting much love from the advanced metrics, a lot of people weren't really into it. It seemed like a lot of the comments were like, oh, no, it's because the offensive line blocks really well for Charbonnet and not well for Walker. Now, that's kind of the point I was making. We have a man blocking offensive line, not a zone blocking offensive line right now. And they're better at man than zone. But I don't know. It seems like people still think that Walker's a better player, and I agree. And they want to give Walker the ball more because they know that, Walker, he's Russian roulette. You give him the ball enough, eventually he's going to break off like an 80-yard run. Like he'll have all these carries that don't go anywhere. He'll have all these bad carries, but then he's off to the races. He's gone. It's over. And Charbonnet doesn't really do that. So yeah. I think they want to continue to feed Walker, generally speaking. I'm not sure I agree.
Yeah, I find myself pretty much where Brennan wrapped it up, at least as far as what I see from the fan base and what I think as well, including within this, John, having that guy that can bust the big play for a touchdown like Walker did this last week for a team that's struggling so much in the red zone is maybe another thing to consider within this, that you have the guy that can go steal you that touchdown, maybe occasionally on those big time game breaking kind of plays that he can bring out. And you need that right now in this offense because you have so few answers when you get down to the red zone. I do think that they are blocking, and it's just a better fit with the blocking style with how Charbonnet is working in there versus Walker. But as weird as it is with that, John, it still doesn't at least drive me, and I don't think drives the general fan base to believe you got to move off of Walker even. There feels like a little bit of, to me, Brendan, a feeling from the fan base of understanding, and I think they're seeing it clearly, of like we were talking earlier on this episode, John, that you just go and watch the L22 and there's just always guys where the play's supposed to go. I don't know if it's teams are ahead of our playbook in the run game or what it is, but when he's in there running it, there's always penetration. Say nothing of they're actually getting push up the field. You always have guys in the backfield that he first has to deal with. Say nothing of, is there even a hole once he gets through those guys in the backfield? And people can see that. And then they see Walker John, getting away from those guys, not getting drugged down for a 3-yard loss, getting away from it and then turning it into 1-yard gain. The yard per carry is going to look good on it, but he actually did all he possibly could do to turn it into that plus play.
Yeah. I think Walker's the better player. Maybe Charbonnet's better for the offensive line that we have right now. But I'm definitely thinking one of the priorities this offseason needs to be getting a different offensive line that will work better with Walker.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not disputing anybody who thinks that Walker's great. I think he is pretty great. I think he's one of the better running backs in this league. But I am wondering how we make the most of what we have on this roster right now.
Agreed. I think the one place maybe fans would call a little bit more for Charbonnet here, Brendan, would you say it's fair that they call for a little bit more of usage of him down in by the red zone?
Mm-hmm.
That's the place where there's some more opening to fill him in with some more carries, is when you get him down there where the tough gets going and it's the holes get a little bit even more closed up, a bit tighter. There's a little bit less room on the back end. That's where I think people are calling for mainly is his usage there.
Yeah, that seems kind of like common sense, right? Like that's clearly his area of expertise.
Yeah.
I think I would love to see that. And I think he's a little bit of a better blocker as well, too, is the thing. So he's also like probably the better third down back, honestly.
It's kind of a good point on this as well, Brendan, because we do want to keep the balance evenly out. And when you look at it this last week, Charbonnet had more carries than Walker this last week. And that's driven mainly because you were having him out there in the third down back role so very often, on top of having some carries also on the first and second down in between. So you are kind of finding the way to even it out here just naturally, I think, especially as Charbonnet gets out to more to full health here, John, because I think lack of the even has been why they haven't distributed the carries better in some recent weeks, is because of those injuries he was going through, where he wasn't at 100% being Charbonnet, and they were having to kind of lean on Walker a little bit harder than they would have liked to. So now with his health coming back, third down back, goal line, and short yardage situations, I think that will almost create the evenness in itself. If not, given sometimes Charbonnet some more carries than Walker in some of these games, more touches.
Mm-hmm.
You buying it?
I mean, Charbonnet is already out snapping him. Like, I've looked at the snap counts, 3 games in a row, Charbonnet's gotten more snaps.
Oh, 3. Okay. So there we go. That's right there, proof to the pudding. So
something's going on here.
Something's going on.
I wouldn't shock me if Pete likes Charbonnet more than Walker, because it's more his style. But Waldron calls the shots at the end of the day on offense, and I don't know if that's going to actually manifest.
Agreed. I think people probably can pull a little bit on that with him to a degree, but he's going to want to go to Walker eventually, and especially having that game-changing guy like, Geno throws him a little throw to not even a flat throw, just a little, I'm almost sacked. Here, let me throw the ball. And then he houses it, and you go, oh, that's right. This guy has that in his bag to call upon. And often offensive coordinators like it, where they can have guys, they throw the ball to 3 yards and then they go take it for a touchdown. That tends to be guys that offensive coordinators will, gravitate towards, makes their job easier, makes them look better. But I think they're going to find the even split here no matter what, John. There's going to be a little bit of I think Walker will still carry the day, but when you factor in the snaps and pass protection, that's where everything kind of then balances out. Everything's in its proper place, which is good. That's what we kind of thought it would be this offseason from an ideal standpoint, as well. John, I want to thank you so very much, man. You dropped 150 tonight on the donos. Garth, you too, with all the donos you dropped tonight on this show. You guys are freaking believable in your support on both of our channels on this. And I hope you guys all know me and Brendan are very appreciative of all the support you guys show to our channels in the way that you do, man. You're awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, John. Just amazing. Well, we, I think, covered through this game pretty well here today, Brendan, as far as this look at this game. It was one where you're facing a Commanders team that was not at full strength, that was weakened down. Some people want us to beat them more. We beat them by how we beat them. We're 6-3. At the end of the day, that's where you are where your record says you are. We're going to make our hay or not make our hay through this 4 or 5 game stretch we find ourselves. That's what's going to determine this season and who we are. But they've done the work, haven't they? They've set the stage to make that happen. They've set the stage as much as you could ask your team to have, to take control your own fate. You decide. You're not relying on this team losing and that team losing, or this team being beat up so that you can play them and then you can beat them. You're going to find out who your team is and what they is now over these next 5 games.
Yeah, and I'm excited to find out, even though, of course, it can go badly. It can. I'm willing to live with that ambiguity, and I kind of want to find out here, knowing that I probably still have the playoffs in my back pocket, regardless of how it goes, because of the way the NFC is breaking out right now. So I'm feeling pretty good.
I feel good about that as well. You had to get this win to kind of help to ensure that, didn't you? Just like you got to get this win this week to help ensure that a winnable game, you should be able to take it. And if you do, almost whatever happens in that 4-game stretch becomes irrelevant as far as making the playoffs go. Yeah, you want to win those games. You want to win more of those games than you lose, but it does become irrelevant. And once you're in the playoffs, anything can kind of happen, though we want to see this team be better than that, of course, this year. We want more than that. But that becomes kind of the floor on the season, which isn't too shabby when it comes to an NFL fan, that you say at this point in time of the year, our floor is getting into the playoffs and our upside is whatever we can come up with in our imagination for the season. So everything's still well within our reach, Brendan, not determined yet. And hopefully, so for some of those fans that aren't having, their faith was wavering a little bit with the Ravens game, that maybe they kind of keep that in mind a little bit. But the team's got to give them, of course, the performance too, to make them believe. And that's the part we'll see as we go forward. Folks, do me a favor, go over to Seahawks, Brendan Nelson, if you've not already done it, and sub on up over to his channels. Of course, sub up over here to Hawks Nest too. If you haven't already, please do like the show on the way out the door today. I want to appreciate all the people that are here watching. I think we're well over 300 at one point in the show today. So a great turnout tonight. Unbelievable support as far as the donations and the super chats from you guys today, as you guys all do. Really, really, really appreciate you guys for all you do bring to bear on that. Big Country was saying, how much is the all 22 tape? I think they charge like $15 a month to do to have all 22 access, something like that, I believe is the cost on that. We will be back on Thursday to do the preview show at 8:00 over on Brendan's side. That'll of course be broadcasting on my side. We'll do a preview matchup. A lot to break down this Rams matchup for how we're going to have to make this game work, Brendan. That McVay's had his number. So you and I have got to get into the depths on this of how we're going to solve this McVay problem. One problem we've not been able to solve very much up until this point since he's arrived there with the Rams. So I look forward to doing that breakdown with you. I thank you as ever, man, for coming on here in the chat and doing this twice a week as you have, man. Every week, every day, you're always there consistently here with me doing this, man. And I really, really do appreciate that.
Thank you for having me on. It's been fun.
Well, thank you for all the folks who donated the chat today as well. John Stillwell, you're amazing. Garth, thank you so much. And everyone else in between from Radu and man, with a lot of super chats here. Corey Coom and Addis, NR, Teddy G, Lucario, you guys are awesome. Appreciate you guys. We will be back in 2 days. And until that time, with a team at 6-3, I would hope I wouldn't have to remind you about the big, beautiful season you have up in front of you. We would hope to not to let you guys know, hey, you're in first place right now, Hawk fans. Hey, your team right now can go out there and take it. I know you're maybe uncertain that this team can't be a contending team out there, some of you, but you should still keep in mind you got everything in your grasp this season. Anything is still possible. Just takes a little bit of imagination. So I hope my fellow Hawk fans don't forget here. Don't get lost. Don't go, hey, I thought they're going to be a contender already. Just wait, it might still be coming yet. So please, my fellow Hawk fans, don't you ever forget. Let me put a reminder out. You let Brendan put a reminder out there. Keep it at the forefront of your mind as we go through the rest of this season. We're going to go make some noise this year. We're going to go put these teams on edge this year. This young team is rounding into shape. So let's go. Let's keep the spirit. Let's know that anything is still possible yet in this season where a lot of football left to be played. So please don't you ever forget. Don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.